When this guy arrives at the academy as their new instructor, everyone looks down on him because he is nothing but an inferior species. Because in this world, having normal ears makes you trash. As he walks in and makes one thing clear, never use their divine powers against others, only against the invaders. Of course, there's always that one stupid guy, saying power is power. Bro thinks he is him. That's when our guy, Jin Shidu, makes him a deal. If he can manage to injure him, he promises not to show up tomorrow. The student quickly agrees and makes a lightning spear, saying not to regret it later, and throws it, and it hits directly. Bro already has that smug smile, but to his surprise, a dagger comes flying and almost hits him that makes him shit his pants. As the dust settles,
surprise, motherfucker!
Our guy Aura farms while holding up a barrier, saying if he wanted to finish him, he would have done so. He then asks the guy who attacks him if he knows the activation condition for the spirits. The guy answers him to raise his divine power and convey it to the spirit to give it form, basically, imagination. Jin tells him he is partly right, but the answer is wavelengths, and after receiving them, can they only manifest their powers? This makes the student confused. Jin further explains that there are 8 fundamental wavelengths. There are fire, thunder, healing, and ice, and up to that's the ability they only know. The addition is Gojo Satoru's ball, light manipulation, atmospheric pressure manipulation, and spatial protection. Even Lord Gita is surprised that he can use 8 of them. Well, that aside, how is this guy so strong, and why having a normal ears make him an inferior? Well, it all started 100 million years ago. A massive catastrophe descended upon planet Earth, annihilating the entire human populace across the globe. The seed of this calamity took root when a mysterious virus began mutating animals, twisting them into otherworldly, terrifying monsters that were later dubbed corruptors. Within a few short years, the outbreak spread so rapidly that humanity lost 99% of its population to the devastation. Humanity's surviving remnants gave everything they had to hold the front lines and keep fighting back. Unfortunately, it quickly became evident that conventional warfare was entirely useless against these beasts. Driven by desperation, humans began experimenting on their own kind. Out of all the trials, Jin Shidu was the only successful test subject to show actual results. Alongside him, scientists engineered a counter-virus comprised of nanomachines designed to restore the planet's corrupted environment. Armed with his newly obtained unparalleled abilities, Jin became the superhuman savior of this world, always attempting to protect the last surviving pockets of humanity. Ultimately, however, it was all in vain. They were simply too late, and eventually even the final human survivors perished. With no one left to protect, Jin's existence seemed stripped of its purpose, having failed the very task he was created for. Or at least that's what his scientist friend Kagura believed. Jin held a fundamentally different perspective. To him, there was still a reason to keep going. Even if he couldn't save the present population, he remained confident that his powers could benefit future generations. With the nanomachines already hard at work purging the corruptor's influence from the environment, he was optimistic that the Earth would eventually be restored, and he was willing to wait for that day. Consequently, Kagura placed him inside a hibernation capsule designed to keep him alive for the centuries to come. While Jin slept peacefully in stasis, the monsters continued to ravage the planet. Yet as decades turned into centuries and centuries blurred into millennia, the shift in the global environment finally began to compound exponentially. Those extraordinarily mutated creatures gradually began to deteriorate, making way for new species to thrive. This cycle of evolution continued for 100 million years, eventually bringing us to a scene where a trio of newly evolved humanoid beings is desperately trying to outpace a terrifying monster. The frantic survivors stumble across an ancient ruin and quickly duck inside to take cover. The relentless demonic beast barges right into the facility after them. Backed into a corner with nowhere left to run, the trio is essentially ready to become a satiating dinner for the creature. In a final desperate plea, the girl in the group cries out for help, praying for the village's guardian god to rescue them. Miraculously, her words are heard, triggering the awakening of our boy, who had been sleeping in the capsule right behind them for 100 million years. The ancient human unleashes an energy beam, blasting the monster on the spot. The confused trio has no clue what the hell just happened, and the situation only gets more messed up when a butt-naked man pops out of nowhere. The very first thing this naked Chad does is look for his clothes, which are neatly preserved in an indestructible lockbox his friend Kagura had developed. After booting up the lab's ancient systems, he discovers he has basically speedrun 100 million years into the future. Even though countless ages had damaged most of the data, the fact that the machine still worked was already a miracle. It appears the nanomachine virus Kagura created did exactly what it was supposed to, annihilating the corruptors which helped preserve the facility. He also finds a communication cube left behind by his old friend, though its contents remain a mystery for now. He then turns toward the humanoid locals, completely forgetting his manhood is just dangling in the breeze. Realizing there are literal kids staring at him in the buff, he quickly gets dressed, restoring the same fresh look he rocked millions of years ago. A short while later, he exits the facility with the trio, only to be instantly blinded by the intense sun shining above the horizon. Truthfully, he wasn't expecting such a vibrant sight. The view before him is nothing short of magnificent, a stark contrast to the apocalyptic wasteland he once knew. The kids immediately start heading back toward their settlement, insisting that their guardian god follow them. Our boy, on the other hand, is far too preoccupied trying to figure out exactly what kind of species he is dealing with. After all, humanity should technically be fossil fuel by now. These humanoids with distinct animal traits must be the result of millions of years of evolution mixed with the continuous interference of nanomachines. Not to mention, these guys are speaking the exact same language used by humans eons ago, heavily implying they branched off from the exact same roots. He introduces himself as Jin Shidu, requesting that they just use his first name. In return, the girl with goat ears introduces herself as Hakama Phil. The koala-looking dude is Danpo, and the cat girl beside him is Shandy. Hakama decides to save the rest of the pleasantries for later and begins dragging Jin along, explaining that her village is just around the corner. She's incredibly desperate to bring their newfound guardian god home so he can fend off the current invaders. Tragically, by the time they arrive, the village has already been raided and devastated, with multiple settlements completely engulfed in flames. Shandy absolutely loses it at the catastrophic sight and rushes ahead in sheer panic to find her mother. As they survey the damage, Jin takes a moment to contemplate their dire situation. He immediately notices how flimsy the town's fortifications are. Both the boundary walls and the houses are constructed from simple wood. This detail alone makes it glaringly obvious that this new civilization is technologically way behind the human era he remembers. Pushing deeper into the village, Jin spots a woman actively fighting off a bizarre monster. From just a single glance, it's obvious she's barely holding her own. It doesn't take long for him to realize that the creature she's facing looks identical to the corruptors from millions of years ago. Furthermore, the surviving corruptors aren't the only unusual thing here. Little Hakama apparently knows some kind of magic technique that makes her physically glow. In the end, her attempt to step in is not even needed. Jin dashes forward and effortlessly knocks the living daylights out of the monster with a single devastating kick. Moving swiftly, he scoops up the injured older woman in his arms and dashes out of the danger zone, leaving little Hakama a clear opening to deliver the finishing blow. Channeling her magic, she unleashes a tiny fireball that packs a massive punch, officially putting the monster down for the count. Observing the dead creature, Jin confirms his theory. The atmospheric nanomachines have indeed stripped these monsters of their legendary healing abilities. What he doesn't understand, however, is how a local girl was able to wield those same nanomachines. His educated guess is that these folks draw nanomachine particles directly from the atmosphere and channel them into offensive spells much like he does. The glaring catch is that historically only pure humans were capable of manipulating that technology. He directly expresses his curiosity to the woman he just saved, wondering if everyone in this era possesses such magic. She isn't entirely sure what he's getting at, but she clarifies that only a select handful of people can actually wield this ability. In their culture, it is believed that individuals blessed with divine powers are the only ones privileged enough to use this magic. In their specific village, there are no more than 4 people who hold this distinction. Jin doesn't have to think too hard to piece it together. Divine powers is just their primitive, fancy way of explaining nanomachine manipulation. Hakama rushes over to the older woman, who turns out to be her grandmother, and anxiously inquires about the rest of the villagers, only to learn they have already evacuated. This statement washes a wave of relief over the trio, though the grandmother is deeply worried about why the kids returned to the dangerous village instead of evacuating with everyone else. After all, the beast they just fought was merely a larva compared to the massive adult monster currently terrorizing the area. Suddenly, a voice of reason penetrates through the tension, assuring the old lady that there is absolutely nothing to fret about. That giant invader she mentioned. This newcomer confidently claims he can slaughter it single-handedly. The grandmother is shocked to see these familiar faces back in the war zone and immediately questions the man about the other villagers. The blue-haired warrior confirms that the rest of the civilians have safely reached the shelter. As it turns out, the older man accompanying this blue-haired guy is actually Hakama's father. The two share an emotional reunion. Naturally, he demands to know where she ran off to. The girl honestly admits she went straight to the sealed door, much to the grandmother's absolute shock. The older woman is furious that Hakama wandered into that god-forsaken territory. According to local legend, the domain beyond that door belongs strictly to the guardian god of the village because little Hakama felt utterly threatened by the monster invasion. She says she only went there because she wanted to ask the deity for help, and as she proudly points out, the literal god from their legends is standing right beside her. Understandably, the grandmother is highly skeptical, flat out refusing to acknowledge this random young lad as their divine protector. Even worse, based on his appearance, they assume our boy belongs to an inferior species, making the idea of granting him such a sacred title downright ridiculous. Stepping in, little Shandy tries to convince her blue-haired brother that Jin is the real deal. In response, her highly prejudiced brother is quick to dismiss her claims, pointing specifically to Jin's ordinary human ears. In their society, anyone who doesn't inherit distinct animal traits is classified as a lesser being. As far as this guy can tell, his little sister is just operating under a massive naive misunderstanding. Still, the little girl stands her ground, proudly revealing that this man easily defeated the invader chasing them. Unimpressed, her brother brushes the feet off, arrogantly claiming he could take down an invader just as easily. Turning his attention to our hero, who already looks utterly exhausted by all this unwarranted crap, the blue-haired warrior threatens the intruder, telling him to leave the village immediately because they have no room to accommodate a being of inferior blood. The yapper just walks right past Jin, still running his mouth. He's so painfully full of himself that he voluntarily takes on the suicidal job of killing the giant invader all by himself. By the way, this arrogant bluehead goes by the name SARS. The grandmother becomes visibly distressed by the reckless, spur-of-the-moment decision SARS just made. She then turns her attention back to Jin. Even though she still couldn't care less about who he actually is, she admits it would be incredibly rude not to express her genuine gratitude for him saving her life. Following her thanks, she asks for one final favor to help escort the kids back to the safety of the shelter while she goes to ensure SARS doesn't throw his life away due to sheer arrogance. Unsurprisingly, our boy flat out refuses to comply. They directly questioned his pride, and he certainly isn't going to just stand there and let them trample all over it. He decides he's going to make damn sure they realize he isn't some useless bystander, and he is definitely not an inferior species. The scene rightfully transitions to the nearby lake, which is currently harboring the grotesque, massive monster. SARS has finally arrived on the scene, and the dude doesn't so much as flinch before dropping into a combat stance. With his spear and body charged with crackling Zeus-like thunder, he executes a lightning-fast sprint toward the beast. In an effort to counterattack, the vile creature quite literally uses its own offspring as projectile weapons. Luckily, these unnurtured slimy larvae are easy targets for SARS' electrified spear. After clearing the path, SARS uses the chance to leap high into the air and land a brutal slash straight across the monster's face. The monster screeches out loud in sheer agony. Of course, we all know it couldn't possibly be that easy, and we'd be right. To SARS' utter dismay, the monster's deep, gaping wound immediately begins to regenerate. The sudden shock paralyzes the blue-haired warrior, leaving him wide open for a lethal counterattack he has no time to dodge. But exactly as expected, Jin intervenes at the last second, effortlessly blocking the massive strike like it's no big deal. SARS, the once unshakably arrogant fool, is suddenly hit with a massive reality check, and the show is just getting started. The monster leaps back to launch another strike with double the previous force. My guy, however, doesn't even grant the creature the opportunity to swing. With just a casual snap of his fingers, Jin blasts a clean hole right through the monster's flesh. The cocky runt can only watch the spectacular display in stunned silence. Soon after, the rest of the group comes rushing toward the water's edge. They haven't even finished catching their breath from the crazy sprint before their jaws hit the floor all over again, watching our boy block the colossal monster with a single hand as the monster continues trying to apply immense force. Jin genuinely starts getting bored of the exchange. Deciding to wrap things up ASAP, he grabs SARS by the waist and leaps out of the way. By the time the camera pans out, we witness the massive monster completely pierced through and through by Jin's energy. SARS frantically argues that big flashy attacks are useless if the monster can just infinitely regenerate. Thankfully, Jin has already taken that exact variable into consideration. This is precisely where the nanomachines come in handy, actively neutralizing the monster's cellular regeneration. The damage SARS inflicted earlier was actually quite considerable, but the cut was far too shallow to overload the creature's healing factor. By now, SARS is practically having a mental breakdown, just processing the sheer possibility that this inferior guy might actually be their guardian god. Humorously, Jin quickly denies having any divine roots that would qualify him for such a grandiose title. What he does know for a fact is that the entire reason for his continued existence was to safeguard the people of the future and slaughter the very monsters standing in front of him. Enraged, the beast snarls and wildly swings its massive tail, desperately trying to squash the agile hero who keeps slipping through its defenses like water. Having quickly formulated a winning strategy, Jin proceeds to completely immobilize the creature by trapping it in dense yellow ice crystals. As he charges up a critical hit guaranteed to obliterate the beast into smithereens, he finally gives a proper introduction. He declares himself a monster born directly from humanity's own tragic foolishness. He is a relic who has survived through 100 million years of sleep. He is the appointed weapon meant to cleanse the earth of this terrifying threat. SARS isn't exactly in a position to comprehend what the hell this guy is mumbling about. But the only thing he cares about right now is whether Jin can actually live up to his massive claims. Well, of course Jin can. After all, he is the literal culmination of countless brutal, tragic experiments, a weapon prepared beyond imagination, born from humanity's blood-stained history. He is the first, last, and only true human remaining in this world. With his introduction thoroughly complete, Jin unleashes an energy attack so blindingly intense that it instantly incinerates the monster. The beam is so unfathomably powerful that it shoots straight through the Earth's atmosphere and pierces the vacuum of space, guaranteeing zero chance for the bastard to ever regrow. With the monster definitively dead and dusted, SARS completely loses the will to speak, having just had his inflated arrogance thoroughly shoved right back in his face. Meanwhile, unseen by the group, there seems to be someone keeping a very close eye on our boy from the bushes. This mysterious woman was originally sent, merely to surveil the new type of invader reported at the lake. She certainly didn't realize she'd be lucky enough to witness an entirely different kind of monster in action. As far as she's concerned, even the elite top brass of the Holy Knights back in the royal capital wouldn't dare go solo against such a colossal threat. Yet this unknown young gun just made it look like an absolute piece of cake. The spy is so hyped that she literally cannot contain her excitement to relay everything she just witnessed back to her guild. Later that day, Jin finally listens to the million-year-old holographic message his friend Kagura left behind for him. His digital buddy kicks things off by acknowledging that millions of years must have passed by the time Jin actually watches this. Because of this massive time jump, Kagura desperately wonders what the future of Earth looks like and whether the planet's environment has actually healed. Right off the bat, he delivers the bad news. The evil corruptors will never truly go extinct, even if the world itself drastically recovers. And honestly, that fact is already pretty evident since Jin literally just finished fighting one. Kagura reveals that while Jin was in deep hibernation, he periodically entered cold sleep himself just to observe the gradual changes happening across the globe. Thanks to the environmental restoration, the overall number of corruptors was steadily decreasing. Unfortunately, as the ecosystem shifted, the corruptors began to evolve right alongside it. This adaptation was a glaring sign that the world would never be able to completely rid itself of this menace. To counter this, Kagura explains that he intentionally genetically edited the newly emerging lifeforms, giving them the potential to resist the corruptors rather than just falling prey to them. Besides that, Kagura admits he prepared a huge power-up specifically for Jin and left it behind. Yep, that ominous syringe full of glowing green liquid is exactly what Jin needs to inject directly into his veins. Upon doing so, Jin's body immediately begins to crackle and radiate with arcane energy. The serum he just took grants him 100% compatibility with the nanomachines. Once the integration is fully complete, Jin gains the insane ability to generate physical objects through nanomachines-shaped transformation. The best part, this upgrade is just the tip of the iceberg. His old friend reveals that he has hidden similar power-ups scattered all across the world. He purposely didn't store them all in one place just in case the corruptors managed to destroy a facility and wipe everything out at once. Plus, this scavenger hunt ensures Jin will have to travel across the globe and witness the magnificence of the new world firsthand. Kagura admits he has no idea what kind of threat the corruptors will pose in this distant era, but he is absolutely certain that the future is far brighter than the bleak apocalyptic reality they left behind eons ago. As the message progresses, the holographic projection shows just how much the poor scientist aged over time. It's a bittersweet moment as Kagura expresses profound sadness knowing he would never be able to see this beautiful, restored world for himself. After officially passing the torch and handing over the responsibilities of the future to Jin, the message finally concludes right on cue. Hakama and the rest of the gang arrive actively searching for their so-called guardian god. She and the koala guy Dampo have come to drag him back to the village because the entire settlement is eagerly waiting for him. As they head back, Jin's sharp eyes catch a glimpse of a familiar research facility access key dangling around Hakama's neck. Curious, he inquires about the pendant, wondering exactly how she got her hands on it. Hakama explains that long ago, an incredible individual told her ancestors to pass it down through the generations as a protective charm. Legend had it that if imminent danger ever threatened the village, this very key would summon the guardian god to protect them. Hearing this, Jin is deeply moved. He's thrilled that his friend went to such incredible lengths to set everything up for him, leaving him feeling profoundly indebted to Kagura. Back in the center of the village, a full-blown party is already underway. While everyone is busy stuffing their faces and drinking, the kids finally parade their guardian back into the spotlight. However, the mood shifts slightly as the adult villagers immediately start gossiping upon seeing an inferior species creature. To their narrow minds, it simply doesn't make sense for a biologically ordinary being to hold the legendary title of guardian god. Just as they are loudly doubting our boy's potential, SARS suddenly stands up and completely goes off on the group for daring to point fingers at their savior. He even goes as far as throwing a few well-earned punches. After all, these hypocrites were the very same cowards who hightailed it out of there the second danger reared its ugly head. Watching this wild back and forth, Hakama and Danpo can practically smell the sheer hypocrisy radiating from SARS. After all, he was literally the first person to scoff at and vehemently doubt Jin's strength just a few hours prior. The village grandmother steps forward to address Jin personally. Feeling overwhelmingly indebted, she attempts to express her utmost gratitude on behalf of the entire settlement. The reality is, if it weren't for his timely intervention, none of them would be standing there right now. The village would have been reduced to ash. True to form, my guy nonchalantly brushes off the flattery, insisting it was just part of his job. Still, he knows these folks won't let him off the hook without giving him something in return as a gesture of goodwill. Rather than asking for material wealth, he requests something far more valuable, which is information. Jin wants a detailed rundown on the current state of the world. Unfortunately, a bunch of isolated villagers isn't exactly equipped to answer such a daunting geopolitical question. To get the answers he seeks, they strongly advise him to visit the royal capital where the king of Kermasia resides. Since people from all walks of life gather in the capital, it's a massive hub for global affairs and vital intel. They mention that merchants from their own Kodama village frequently travel there to sell specialty goods crafted from wood silkworm thread. While the road to the capital is notoriously long and treacherous, the grandma reckons Jin will be perfectly fine since he's obviously not your average Joe. She even tasks Hakama with being his official guide, suggesting Jin take her along since she was already planning to head to the royal capital anyway. Because Hakama is one of the rare few who can wield divine powers, she wants to enroll in the prestigious academy dedicated to training magic users. Jin is genuinely surprised to learn that formal educational institutions still exist in this era. Suddenly, it becomes clear that our boy has earned himself a very loud, very loyal admirer. SARS enthusiastically volunteers to act as the guardian god's personal bodyguard on the journey. The old woman quickly shoots him down, reminding SARS that he literally has zero reason to visit the capital. However, SARS loudly boasts that he absolutely does have a reason. He plans to join the esteemed Holy Knight Order. Grandma, however, knows this is purely wishful thinking. She ruthlessly points out that SARS couldn't even manage to get accepted into the basic academy, so joining the elite Knight Order is a massive long shot. This catches Jin off guard. Considering SARS is a divine power wielder, Jin assumed the guy would breeze through the admission process effortlessly. Hakama enlightens him about the catch. The academy has a required written exam made to weed out fools, and SARS sadly fell victim to his own stupidity. Banter aside, Jin finds himself growing increasingly curious about this elite class known as the Holy Knights. Speaking of which, the scene transitions away from the village to a heavily armored knight. He is visibly stunned to learn that the giant invader terrorizing the Kodama village region has already been completely annihilated. The one delivering this massive bombshell is the exact same spy chick who was watching the entire lake battle from the bushes. The knight demands she confirm the facts one more time, and the girl firmly corroborates her story without a single moment of hesitation. The Holy Knight is in absolute disbelief to this day. He never could have imagined that anyone outside of their elite order possessed the raw capability to solo a monster of that caliber. Right in the middle of their debrief, a corruptor suddenly attempts to ambush the spy, leaping at her exposed back. The knight reacts with blinding speed, drawing his sword and slicing the monster cleanly in two. Instead of retreating to the safety of the kingdom, the knight makes a bold decision. He is officially too intrigued, eager to personally track down and meet the mysterious man who effortlessly slaughtered such an enormous beast. Jin wakes up to a gorgeous morning, enjoying the taste of air. Still finding it hard to believe that he could enjoy a scenery like this. Part of him regrets that his dear friend Kagura can't see it alongside him. One of the kids brings him his clothes, urging the guardian god to put them on. In the next scene, we have our boy out on the village side. Hakama's grandma is telling her to fulfill her duty properly as a guide, while SARS is acting all fed up that he couldn't be the one to lead Jin as a travel guide. Jin takes special interest in the guy, and even praises SARS' movement, assuring him that he'll be waiting for his arrival at the royal capital. This remark turns SARS into a squealing fangirl, wishing the guardian god the best and hoping that he takes care of Hakama. Hakama herself is told to be safe. And with that, the journey of the two begins with their departure. Hakama and Jin walk together, crossing all kinds of gorgeous and scenic views. Hakama shows him around until finally setting camp, Jin asks about how far the capital is. Apparently, it's 4 more days of walking, so it's not as far as he expected, but she's really curious about his side and why he's bent on exploring the world. Refusing to share, he tells her that it's a secret. Deep down, Gojo over here knows that the corruptors are still alive based on Kagura's loose description, and he even got to encounter a few in this era. Corruptors normally reproduce only in ruined and polluted places, which is the complete opposite of this area, meaning someone or something is secretly causing a change that must be investigated. Hakama is scared to see him make a face so serious while lost in thought, so he apologizes to her for contemplating. Jin understands one thing. This era isn't totally dominated by the corruptor creature. Signs of survival are clear and around. His first main goal is to investigate the people of this era, then deal with the corruptors. Researching the monsters isn't so hard, as he can personally do it at his leisure. Apart from that, Bro wants an immediate change and requests Hakama to stop calling him a guardian god. She gives him too much respect even then, and he has to urge her to just call him Jin. The sound of a horse galloping catches the attention of both. A holy knight has arrived alongside his team, urging to have a moment with our duo. This guy looks like your average Prince Charming, except Jin doesn't care and asks about his identity anyway. Hailing from the Holy Knight Order, the captain of the 7th Division announces himself as Argus Ulton. The concept of a Holy Knight is still new to our boy, who wonders if these are the interesting beings that the villagers mentioned. Among Argus's team, one bratty knight throws a tantrum and roars at the commoner for showing complete ignorance to her leader by refusing to stand up. She even tells her captain that these two must be the culprits, only for Argus to tell her to tone down. Karina is fussing in the background while the Holy Knight addresses Jin with more respect this time. Our boy is simply curious about Karina's words earlier, but the Holy Knight brushes it off, acting like she was just being rude. Argus then changes topics and asks about the identity of the man, where he came from, or where he's headed next. Hakama shares that they belong to Kodama village with a route set to the royal capital. Karina uses this as confirmation again, acting on her high horse as she accuses the two of being the inferior species. In fact, she goes on this whole pretentious expose, acting like she's 30,000 IQ for revealing inferior beings from Kodama village. Jin is actually fascinated by the advancements of this world when he hears that there are birth records. But Argus butts in again and stops Karina from making reckless assumptions. In fact, he can tell that the little girl Hakama is actually wearing special Kodama clothes, ones that are revered with high quality even at the capital. The children of the village don't wear such royal clothes, therefore confirming that they are indeed from the village, proving Karina's dumbass wrong again. Though he's certain of the girl, Argus unsheathes his blade and points it at the man standing before him, declaring him different from the rest. First, he's never even seen this guy's clothes, posing the question where he belongs to. The Holy Knight explains that many bandits have been causing trouble along the road between Kodama village and the capital. It's possible that this guy is one of those bandits trying to traffic children, and Hakama is also in on the act while acting harmless. The little girl tries to pitch in with the denial, but they don't believe a single word. Without thinking things through, Hakama charges up an attack only, to get cornered with several magical swords pinning her from every direction. She earns the praise of the Holy Knight for having divine power, while our boy is pretty impressed by the power of a Holy Knight. Argus's capabilities are strong. Jin can see that right away. And now that he's in a position of true authority, the Holy Knight demands an explanation on where the man came from. That information will be the deciding factor between letting our boy live or not. But just hearing that, Jin glares at him with the look of murder. The tension is strong, but eventually Bro decides not to pursue his feelings and simply gasps that he came from Kodama village. Karina jumps up to call him a liar to his face, but Argus genuinely accepts this explanation and puts down his weapon. This is a shocking turnaround, especially when the dude was moments away from making death threats. The Holy Knight can sense that he's not telling a lie, while Hakama officially declares Jin as the guardian god of the village. The concept of a guardian god fascinates the Holy Knight, but he doesn't take it seriously and turns around to leave. He goes back up on his horse, apologizing for his rudeness. Argus was actually doing all of that as part of his job. The captain understands that they'll meet each other at the royal capital in the future. In fact, he even offers them a chance to come find him if they run up in some trouble. Saying so, he hastens to take his leave, embarrassing Karina, who wanted some serious shit to go down for some reason. Even Jin is looking confused with this bitch's psychotic need for drama. In the next scene, we see the team en route to their next destination. Karina is forcing herself for no reason, highlighting that Jin is suspicious and that they shouldn't have let that inferior species get away. The words inferior species hang in his throat. Argus taunts the girl for not knowing which one of them is truly the inferior species. Confirming his thoughts, Rhea agrees too, much to Karina's shock. In fact, she emphasizes just how much of a godlike gap between them and the man they were facing was at the time. Argus actually attempted to make a move 3 times in one instance, but his resolve couldn't even allow him that. He sensed that Jin, with one hand still in his pocket, would move the instant he tried anything and counter him before the attack even began. Now, I don't even know what the hell that means, but damn, good job, our protagonist. By the way, Argus even tried to use divine power, and in the face of Jin, the damn power didn't even activate, frightening Karina. The same move that he pulled against Hakama and easily cornered her couldn't even work on him. Rhea tried to do the same, only to fall short too, implying that there's a different league of a difference between their strength and a monster like Jin. A feat like that, even in Argus's view, can only be done by the Supreme Commander among the Night Order at best. Rhea and Karina scoff. The imbecilic girl had no idea just how outclassed they were at the time. Prince Charming emphasizes that they just met a monster, an anomaly different from the rest, and it's fine if Karina made a mistake because she's new to their unit. As for the one who killed the invader of the Kodama village, Argus suspects that it's the same guy. Karina thinks that the situation is dangerous, but her captain is wise and believes it's dangerous to attack someone with zero information on the person. He also believes Jin is pretty chill for being passive, and right now, their goal is to return to the royal capital as their involvement is no longer necessary. The final thing they talk about is to inform the guild regarding the situation of the bandits, and in Argus's thoughts, he is left arranged with this guardian god character of Kodama village. If only that man could become their ally, it could solve a whole number of issues their country suffers from. In the next scene, our boy is on the road again with Hakama, mentioning how they encountered someone interesting the other day. He wonders if all of the holy knights are just as strong as the one they met. But Hakama clarifies that Argus was exceptional. Even among the Night Order, only the best of the best are hailed as the holy knights to become their leaders. Argus is at the top of their league. She even gestures how fast his spirit art activation was the other day, a term that our boy is unfamiliar with. Apparently, in the current era, borrowing the powers of the spirits is called divine power. And techniques used to cultivate such power is basically the spirit method or spirit arts. In other words, Kagura and Jin's nanomachines are basically being treated like spirits beyond their comprehension. He knows that they must look like some really messed up fantasy for the current age, but he can't help but remember Karina's furious feelings regarding lesser beings. Jin sparks his interest in the term and learns that the current era holds several different races of people. There are those resembling insects and fish too, and based on her grandmother's words, a certain race could even live in water or specific regions alone. Over time, that changed as the creatures evolved to survive in their surroundings. This line is fascinating to Jin, who immediately reflects that it means some survivors of humanity must have been the cause to kickstart an evolution cycle 100 million years later. He doesn't want to overthink this grand assumption. Instead, Jin figures that the people who didn't change and adapt to the environment basically became a laughingstock. They're called the inferior species. Since they can't adapt, they're seen as bottom feeders and weak, even though their society treats them like a bunch of nobodies, selling them as slaves. The concept of slavery existing in this era bothers our boy, but Hakama stands resolute in her own opinion. She brightly asserts that there's hardly any difference between them and the inferior beings. She doesn't understand why people treat others with disregard just because someone is different from them. Every person is weird in their own way. And hearing her talk like that, Jin is impressed with the little girl's character. While they're talking, someone pops up in front of them, looking rugged and beaten down. This kid collapses on the road, begging for their help. As Hakama rushes to his side, Jin observes the kid closely, realizing that this one doesn't possess any animalistic features based on ears, which means it's some kind of human. The kid is covered from neck to toe with bruises. These injuries aren't normal for a casual incident. Hakama tries her best to lift the girl up while Jin activates his powers to help heal the person. Instead of being grateful, the kid immediately drops the act and pulls out a blade aimed against Hakama's neck, threatening to kill her if Jin moves even an inch from where he stands. This situation turned out far different from what our boy imagined. Now he knows for certain that he's been set up from the start. He also scans his environment to check for the ones who are nearby. A man materializes into reality out of thin air, praising Poiré for the work by following his instructions. This ability is called stealth camouflage. It functions thanks to the nanomachines absorbing the visuals of the surroundings and using that to create a cloak of invisibility. The only weakness is that the invisibility ceases to function upon movement, but these guys used it pretty well. The captain bullies Jin, calling him an inferior species and for possessing some neat clothes. He also asks the same question of where Jin came from, but our boy is stone cold and on his mewing streak, so he doesn't respond. Hakama worriedly shouts for him while the captain threatens to kill the girl if he dares to move even a bit. Hakama acts on her own again by activating her ability, but our boy roars at her to stop at once. He doesn't want her to use such power against people, implying that it's dangerous. The young girl has no idea how she should respond, while Captain Bandit overhears having the time of his life, realizing that the girl has divine power too. They ask Jin if he can also wield such strength, but Bro is in the mood to mess around, so he acts like a mystery to be found out. Pissed off, the meathead kicks him down, reminding the inferior species to stay in his lane. The captain takes issue with his subordinate trying to damage their goods. Then again, they don't have high hopes of them selling at a good price. They don't even entertain the idea of Jin possessing divine power since he looks like an inferior being at best. While at the same time, Hakama is starting to realize that these are the bandits and slave traders that Argus warned them about. The bandit leader activates a spell of his own to take care of the girl first, while Hakama is fearing for her life that they'll be taken and sold as slaves at this rate. In the next scene, hilariously, Jin wakes her up from her beauty sleep. Bro's got no shirt on because these fools literally stole all his drip, only sparing his undies. Hakama seems to be alright, but she's genuinely curious where they're even at. It looks like some kind of containment facility where the other slaves are kept. Jin explains that it's the hideout of the bandits, even pointing to the ones that were captured before them. All of these guys look like they're in rough shape. Most are inferior species. It's a grim scene, but hilariously, Hakama is more curious why this dude's got his tits out in the open like that. Jin explains they took everything away from him for looking strange, but she's just amazed how confident this man is without his clothes. Apparently this look is what suits Jin most in comfort. But aside from that, she's the most curious why he didn't fight back then and there. With his godlike power, he could have wiped them in a single go. Before he could answer, Poiré was sent inside the room for some breakfast. After finding them awake, she offers them a meal. Hakama is pissed off, but Poiré doesn't really care whether they hate her or not, as she never had any expectations of being forgiven. The pure girl is annoyed, but Jin stuns Blue Hair by actually calling her kind. It comes as a shock to the pretend victim. But in reality, Jin shares that bad people don't even care about the concept of whether someone hates them in the first place or if they deserve forgiveness. The fact that Poiré thinks of these things is enough to conclude she's kind. Regardless, the underwear man over here is done playing yoga and gets to the real business. He grabs hold of the bars in Uncle Iroh fashion, literally freaking bends them apart to carve him a way out. Poiré is completely stunned by the unbelievable thing she just witnessed. In reality, Jin has actually been waiting for her all this time for a private conversation. The blue hair is confused as to why, but Jin can already sense that she's blackmailed into working because someone she cares about is imprisoned here somewhere. Poiré is terrified that how this guy's guess is so damn accurate. He even goes on to heal her wounds, emphasizing that the only reason he was fooled is because he knew the girl's wounds were actually real. Criminals don't really go around roughening up their own allies to near-death condition. That's how he knew immediately that Poiré was being blackmailed and forced into work. Jin's words cause her to experience massive guilt, ultimately allowing her a chance to share that her little brother has been captured by these 6 scumbags. They constantly threaten that they'll sell the boy outside the country if she resists, that they'll never let her see him again. Poiré breaks down into tears, collapsing that even her parents were slaughtered by these bastards, so her brother's all that's left. Just hearing her side of the story gets this man going unlike anything else. Jin is in a literal fit of rage, and Hakama finally understands why he let himself be captured like that. His goal has always been to save these people, but he also knows that villains are stubborn and annoying. Even letting a single one escape leads to disaster later, because they can rebuild their power and create trouble again. Long story short, Bro wants to squash these cockroaches together, and he starts off by kicking the crap out of this furry with a backshot. With the path now open, Gojo Satoru intends to rip these lowlives to pieces. Jin knows the psyche of villains more than anyone, and we get an understanding of this when we circle back to 100 million years into the past, when human civilization had reached its technological prime. The kid at the time was beaten down and had nothing. His first thoughts were to admire justice in the world, but that admiration came with a second, more haunting realization. Any world that needed justice was also filled with an overwhelming amount of bad people. People who wanted to hunt him down, for example. Living an ordinary life is something to be praised, but in the kind of environment he grew up in, the boy never experienced the peace he ever wanted. So when it came to the people who tried to mess with him, Jin literally crushed them under the weight of his powers, breaking their bones and destroying them over the years. He took down bad people everywhere he went, continuously crushing the ones that disrupted the peace of the world. Until one day, a man came to him, suggesting a different opinion. He thought that Jin had been born into the wrong world, and that leads us back to the present. Our boy strides forward like a total Chad to confront the fools standing in his way. Having already laid waste to piles of bodies, Bro just wants to increase his kill count, and refusing to answer any questions, he throws one of their own at the henchman in front. The moment one of them catches the guy, our boy swoops in with a lightning-fast kick and slaughters the other. His friend is left horrified because Jin just sends this dude with a crater in the wall, appearing no different than a goddamn monster who doesn't know how to stop. Terrified, the guy tries to run away, but it's pointless. Only his agonizing screams reach the lower-level captives. Poiré can sense that this scream is coming from the others. She's genuinely starting to wonder who the hell Jin is. Hakama casually reveals that this dude is a walking god and that they have nothing to worry about as he'll take care of everything by himself. Right now, they need to follow his instructions to head outside, but it's terrifying to Poiré that they're about to be saved. The leader of the bandits isn't exactly easy to beat, even though he possesses a talent for powerful divine magic. In a battle of brute strength, it's hard to imagine anyone taking that guy down. But while Poiré is thinking such useless thoughts, our boy already has the dude quivering on his knees. The boss begs Jin to stop, offering him lumps of money, even adding slaves into the picture. By the way, Poiré's brother is kept in this room. Jin is disgusted by the mere suggestion of being offered slaves. He kills another guy in front of the boss while the bandit leader questions what the hell is going on. Not even his spirit arts can seem to activate in the face of this man's divine powers. But even more than that is the mystery of why Jin gained all this power. Hilariously, our boy calls this clown a half-baked villain, because the real ones at least have the spirit to run away when they know they're outclassed. But the bandit leader alongside his henchmen are all condescending assholes who look down on others, deluding themselves into thinking they could win. But the moment they fear a loss is in sight, they begin to plead. Honestly, this verbal beatdown is satisfying, and following our boy's advice, the bandit leader moves his feet to start running. He goes straight to the elevator to pull the lever, unleashing a secret weapon they've encaged as a monster. Jin is shocked to find a corrupted under their control. It's a powerful beast acquired for a certain noble. What bothers me is how the hell purple Arnold Schwarzenegger over here couldn't break out of his cage sooner. The bandit leader is more than happy to give Jin a challenge, vowing to reduce everything to chaos as the creature roars its battle cry. The corrupted monster attacks first, swinging down hard as if to smash Jin into the ground. The attack is blocked, giving us a view of that massive Gaiat in the process. The bandit leader is left speechless by the power of Jin's the power of his muscles. Meanwhile, Jin shares that he was literally born with a superhuman body, possessing muscle fibers several orders of magnitude higher than the average person. Now that it's his turn to strike, this man kicks the creature back before vowing to unleash more of his strength. Bro shoots a Kamehameha wave like he's Goku or something, wiping out the monster to pieces in a single blast. All that yapping, and the bandit leader is back to where he started on his knees again. Jin stares him down, wondering what this pathetic scumbag will do next. Now that he's run out of options, Bro tries to weasel his way out, begging to be spared. But my glorious white-haired king responds with a straight punch to his face, refusing any chance of mercy. With the matter settled, he takes back his aura farming drip and apologizes to the kids in advance for waiting. First, Bro wants to check the documents to gather direct evidence of their crimes. He opens a drawer and finds an interesting set of notes. Just one glance at them probably makes you think that this dude has hit the jackpot. But no, our boy has absolutely no idea what the hell he's reading right now. The language is unfamiliar to him, so he is too intense to use Hakama for help. Even then, Jin just can't place a finger on why these bandits were using the corrupted. To confirm his suspicions, he inspects the torn remains of the monster he defeated. This way, he can access the cameras of the surrounding nanomachines floating in the room. Jin wants to check the records of last week at the least and stumbles across a footage of his liking. Apparently, this one noble came to them with the monster and refused to elaborate his intentions with the creature. Instead, he left them a little nugget. This conniving villain hinted at the demise of the country soon. Jin takes note of this detail for later. While the scene cuts to the children who escaped the containment, Poiré ends up reuniting with her little brother. The two embrace each other in a long hug, feeling safe that neither of them got hurt badly. She turns and addresses Jin as a god, thanking him for all his efforts while Bro refuses to accept the name. Aside from that, he's curious about the people in red uniforms currently seizing the bandits. Apparently, they're supposed to be guild staff members. In fact, the person with the majestic hair and beard standing close to them is the guild master of their city. That same man becomes interested in Jin and walks over to ask whether he had anything to do with the incident. Our boy confirms his contribution, imploring Padrak to introduce himself formally as the guildmaster and thank him for his efforts. He takes one look at the guy, stunned as to how someone could defeat such a large number of people without even taking a single hit. Despite wielding the appearance of an inferior species, Padrak can tell this guy is no laughing matter. The guildmaster shares that the incident resulted in heaps of damage. Bandit extermination requests are at an all-time high. This makes Jin curious because he thinks any lord would do his best to prioritize the capture of the bandits. The guildmaster laughs, arguing that not even the lord has that level of authority. Dealing with the crimes is considered the duty of the guild members, the ones who swear their loyalty to the king. Even if Lord Shapian, the ruler of the land, were to commit crimes, they would have to report the situation to the king, even if something like that seems unlikely. Padrak is confident in his assumption, while Jin is comparing the situation from a 100 million years back, realizing that a lord represents a mayor, and the guild is acting like the police. Even then, Lord Shapian is not someone who can be trusted easily. Jin decides to surrender all the documents that he recovered from the bandits, questioning if they can be of any use to the guild. The guildmaster reads one of them only to realize that it's a proper list of the ones who traded with the bandits. Thanks to this list, they can easily arrest the whole group. Curious, Jin asks if the city lord's name is also on the list. But impressively enough, Lord Shapian's name is nowhere to be found, making him a clever villain who hides his tracks. For now, Jin can't do much about the situation. He's helped free the slaves, so he wants to know what will become of them now. The guildmaster assures them that the guild will take responsibility for returning them home safely if a missing report has been filed, but for the ones who don't have such a thing, unfortunately, they don't have anywhere to go. The system is shitty because it refuses to account for cases like Poire and Nino, who lost their parents. So Jin asks for a shelter to keep them in. Shockingly, this era doesn't even have a shelter in town. Padrak can only find work for these kids, but because they're both classified as inferior, doing that will be difficult too. The kids are sulking while Jin is disappointed that it's all the same in this world. He doesn't want to leave these kids alone even if there's nowhere to work. Suddenly, an idea pops up in his head. So he asks them if these two would be willing to work somewhere if they had the chance. Poire agrees to try, which makes Jin remember the Golden Knight Argus, who had once offered to help them if they ever needed it. In the next scene, we're at the royal capital, Kurmosia, to visit Argus. The Holy Knight is on his way back when suddenly he experiences a sudden chill out of nowhere. Arriving at his residence, he tells the team to rest up for the day. Argus returns to his quarters. He's welcomed by an entourage of maids and butlers welcoming him with pride and glory. The first thing he does is ask for an update, and from the reactions of his servants, the Holy Knight can gather that something must have happened. The butler apologizes for troubling his master only when he's just returned. While this is going on, his sister watches the scene from above with a glaring look. Argus receives the report and gets an immediate headache. The situation is way worse than he thought it would be, as an invader seemed to pop inside the capital and wreak havoc. The question of how it got in is less important to him, but rather, who helped navigate the beast inside is the real problem. His best guess is that it's someone from Harnisk Academy, a place teeming with suspicious people plotting their demise. Regardless, he's in dire need of comrades to control the situation of the capital, and at this time, Jin and his group resumed their journey for the capital. 3 days flew by into the extermination mission. Poire began to wonder if there's truly a job for inferior beings like them to take up in the capital. Being the kind man he is, Jin assures them that their ability to read and write is already a huge edge. So, he urges the kid to have more confidence. Hakama, on the other hand, points in the distance, sharing that the capital is near. Our boy is absolutely gobsmacked when he stares at the grand beauty of the royal capital. By the evening, they arrive inside the capital. The place is bustling with people all around. Hakama reveals that the capital relies on imports, which means every kind of good is available here, even the Kodama clothing that they once mentioned about. Jin finds it interesting and all, and takes notice of a bunch of insect mutants too. There's an abundance of races around here, showcasing how they all develop differently. The streets are tidy. Safety is top-notch in the capital too. But even with all those benefits, there are some disgusting parts. Jin reflects that each era shares its own bundle of problems. He asks Hakama about the entrance exam for the academy and learns that it's going to be held next week. They're going to be waiting until the exam starts. But overhearing their conversation, a blonde girl wonders if this party is interested in entering Harnisk Academy, especially when they all look like inferior species. We arrive at the hotel rooms where Hakama and Nino pounce on top of the comfy beds. At last, they are able to sleep somewhere proper. With Jin's initial goal of reaching the capital being fulfilled, this makes him wonder what he should do next, as even though this is a new era, he still has to find a way to make money to survive. By the way, Bro got a lump of money for the extermination of the bandits, but he knows it won't last him forever, especially not with the 4 of them. Then there's the added issue of finding these kids jobs to work at, and an immediate solution to this would be a meeting with Argus. However, right now, they don't know anything about the guy's location or what connections that could lead them to him. Jin speculates a bunch of options, prioritizing the investigation of corruptors first. He knows that there are people in this era trying to exploit such monsters for their own goals. Corruptors are by nature very dangerous beings, so they can't be left unattended. This time he refuses to let the living face total annihilation again. Anyway, he casually asks Hakama what the people of this country do when they have to research something. Apparently they read books on the subject or consult someone knowledgeable. The books themselves are pretty expensive. Even in the village, they had to read the books together just to afford them. At the same time, the royal capital boasts a spectacular library, allowing research to be much easier. Jin likes that idea because now he can use that library to his advantage and find clues about the laboratory that Kagura left behind. In the next scene, Bro's at the receptionist desk, but the girl openly rejects him from using the facility. Since books are considered sacred national property, they don't allow just anyone free entry. Only the students of a recognized academy or nobles are allowed to use such a place, once more complicating the situation for our boy. Hakama hilariously reminds Jin that Bro can't even read in his current state, though he's trying his best to learn letters. It'll take him a while to get a full grasp of the language, Bro is scratching his head like he's got an exam to prepare for, while two dudes in a cloak are secretly spying on them as part of their mission. They come up to confront Jin for a simple chat, but actually, it's a conversation that starts with a violent punch. Our boy reflexively grabs his fist right away before taunting the guy for having amazing manners in his introduction. So much for the city's safety when people are attacking like this. But the guy remains arrogant, and Jin wards off his fist up in the air, diverting a powerful magic blast. The fighter praises him for having sharp instincts, while Poiré can't fathom how these guys are openly using divine power in the middle of a civilian zone. Our boy wants to understand what these losers are after, and soon figures out that someone has placed a target on his head. That only works out in his favor, though. Even though these bullies threaten Jin's group to get lost from the capital unless they want to deal with danger, Jin doesn't really budge on his position, inviting the guy to try and attack him again, only to get his fist caught and literally slammed into the hard ground. After delivering a reality check to one of them, he turns to the other, who is firing a magic blast right at him. Jin refuses to dodge and blocks the fiery attack head-on, making this guy think he dealt some serious damage. But out of the smoke emerges a hand as he quickly grabs the guy and lifts him up as if he weighs nothing. Adopting a serious tone, Jin mocks them for being pathetically weak while challenging him. That is, if they even have the will to try. Bro really is the Gojo Satoru of this story. Meanwhile, his victim is questioning how on earth a low-level species is capable of so much strength. Suddenly, a knight from the Order stops the fight. It's Karina who is annoyed that she has to interrupt her day off for this trouble. The girl doesn't even care about the assailants who attacked Jin. She just wants to throw both Hakama and our boy in jail for the last time, much to Jin's favor, causing a scene that attracted the attention of someone connected to Argus, even if she's currently screaming in his face. After busting a street fight, Karina spots Jin and immediately gets excited because she believes she has finally caught the inferior species Jin causing trouble in the city again. She is just about to start lecturing him, but a demi-human spectator standing nearby approaches her and admits that she saw everything that happened. The spectator explains that Jin was actually the one who got attacked first and that he was only defending himself during the fight. When Karina checks the faces of the attackers, she quickly realizes that they are her usual foolish troublemaker juniors from Harnisk Academy. She quietly hopes that the Holy Captain's younger sister is not involved in this mess again. Jin asks Karina if she's currently on patrol and questions her about it, pointing out that he thought guild members usually handle duties like this around the city. Karina replies that she was simply taking care of her nightly responsibility of maintaining order while she was on her way to visit a cafe nearby. Now that she has personally seen Jin defeat several strong students from the academy with ease, Karina begins to feel that her captain's earlier suspicions about this so-called inferior human might actually be correct. She tries to leave after asking Jin not to cause any more trouble, but Jin stops her and uses the chance to request that she guide him to her captain, Argus. Once the ancient human finally gets an audience with Captain Argus of the 7th Division, he goes straight to the point and asks the man to hire them, reminding Argus that he was the one who had previously offered his help. When Argus asks about the kids who came along with him, Jin explains that he ended up confronting the bandits Argus had been searching for and managed to capture them before handing them over to the guild. Argus becomes anxious because he finds it hard to believe that someone who looks like an inferior species could accomplish all of that so quickly. Jin then continues explaining that he brought along Nino and his big sister Poire because they had no one else to rely on and people would treat them poorly due to being considered an inferior species. Because of that, Jin asks the captain if he could arrange some kind of work for them. Captain Argus reminds the ancient human that he has no obligation toward them, but Jin argues that he is willing to take responsibility for the kids since he is the one who saved them. Argus finds this reasoning interesting while the children look at their savior with hopeful expressions. The captain then quickly forms an idea and decides to use the kids as a bargaining piece. He calmly tells Jin that he will allow the kids to stay at his place and work there only if Jin agrees to work as a teacher at the academy. Jin accepts the condition without giving it much thought, and soon the kids are changed into maid outfits. Poiré thanks the captain sincerely while the captain instructs his other maidservants to properly educate them and make sure that no discrimination happens. As Jin walks away with Argus, he asks the captain what kind of catch is involved in him working as an instructor. Argus explains that although he has no clear idea where Jin originally came from, his instincts tell him that Jin is a trustworthy person. The captain then moves directly to the real point and tells Jin that he wants him to infiltrate the Harnisk Academy. Jin becomes serious and asks for a proper explanation, and Argus begins describing the current power struggle inside the capital. According to him, several factions are locked in a quiet cold war over control of the throne since the king is critically ill and might kick the bucket at any second now. He further explains that aside from the usual succession conflict, there are also individuals who hold no legitimate right to the throne, but still want to seize power. Apparently, these people are extremely dangerous and are even using the corruptors, which people in this era call invaders, as weapons to push their plans forward. Jin remembers Lord Shepion and begins to realize that there might be even more troublesome figures than him. The captain explains that he wants to uncover these people, find their hidden base, and that Harnisk Academy is currently the place he suspects the most. Argus then knocks on the door and introduces Jin to his younger sister, Miria Ulton. He explains that she attends the academy and will guide him there. Miria immediately shows her sharp tongue as she calls Jin a lowly inferior species, just like Karina did earlier. The captain quickly tries to stop her and reminds her that speaking like that is rude. However, she keeps insisting that she does not approve of giving such an important task to someone she considers an inferior species. Points out her rude attitude, which makes the captain embarrassed, and he apologizes for her behavior. Karina steps closer to Jin and quietly whispers that Miria is actually very capable, but she strongly dislikes inferior species. Miria keeps throwing insults at Jin and claims that she does not see him as someone qualified to take the role of an instructor. Hakama then makes the situation worse by casually revealing that her guardian cannot even read. However, Hakama quickly continues by praising how strong and capable Jin really is. Her words suddenly make Karina realize that Miria was the one who earlier asked the academy students to attack Jin. The captain repeatedly apologizes again and promises that he will properly discipline his sister. Jin changes the subject and asks Argus what exactly he is expected to teach at the academy. Argus replies that from his observations, Jin seems quite skilled with spirit arts, which is why he believes Jin would be the perfect person to teach the basic fundamentals. He then lists the 4 basic spirit arts as ignition, discharge, freezing, and healing, and explains that being able to use even 2 of them should already be considered enough. Hearing that the basics here consist of only 4 spirit arts, Jin realizes that the bandit leader from earlier was actually quite skilled. The ability he used would already count as a special spirit art in this place. Jin quietly smiles as he decides that he might change the way people in this era understand these special powers. The story then shifts to a week later when it is finally time for Hakama to take her entrance exam at the academy. Argus walks in together with Jin since he wants him to take responsibility for the instructor duties this year. It appears that every year one division from the Night Order must fill this position, and this time it is the turn of the 7th Division. While Jin quietly walks behind them, the fat man named Rudman keeps staring at him the entire time. They eventually arrive at the headmaster's office, and Argus respectfully greets her. The headmaster smiles when she sees her former pupil doing so well in the Night Order. She then mentions the faction struggles happening inside the country and starts criticizing Jin, telling the captain that sending an inferior species to handle such an important academy role makes it look like he is taking the matter lightly. The captain firmly insists that Jin is more capable than anyone else in his division. When the skinny rat lord Gita notices that the headmaster seems ready to accept Jin as their instructor, he quickly objects to the idea. He now takes over the role of insulting the poor ancient human and strongly argues that they cannot allow an inferior human to take such a position. The headmaster then turns toward Lord Rudman and asks for his opinion regarding this protest. The fat man casually agrees with the concern but then presents a practical argument about the backlash they might face from both the students and the other instructors. The headmaster then joins the protest as well and admits that she shares the same concern. Jin realizes he is being spoken about without being included. So he steps forward and stands up for himself before respectfully greeting them. He calmly introduces himself with proper manners, showing that he can remain composed even while being openly mocked. He then asks the lords a direct question, wondering whether they are judging him because he looks like an inferior species or because they believe he lacks the power needed for the role. The principal smiles and replies that the only thing that concerns them is whether he truly has the required ability. Then she asks him if he can prove it to them. When Argus suggests that the headmaster test him herself, she agrees, and a quick mock battle is arranged at the Harnisk Academy Spirit Arts Training Ground. The sly, skinny rat is the one who steps forward to face Jin, laughing as he says that at least Jin will not embarrass himself too badly since there are only a few students around today. The headmaster then explains the rules and makes it clear that they can only fight using spirit arts because that is exactly what she expects their new tutor to teach at the academy. Some of the students gather to watch the match, including Miria, who stands among the spectators. She is excited because this is the first time she will see the skinny rat personally engage in a battle. Jin already understands how this will end, yet he lets out a quiet sigh and allows the Institute to witness his power for themselves. Argus, however, begins to feel uncertain. This is the first time he will actually see the person he recommended fighting in front of others, and he worries that Jin might end up embarrassing him in front of everyone. Lord Gita, on the other hand, looks extremely excited and seems eager to end the match quickly. While putting Jin in his place, he quickly declares that he will take the opening move and immediately launches a huge fireball that he believes will be enough to defeat Jin in a single strike. Jin avoids the attack calmly and effortlessly, while the skinny rat remains convinced that he can still win and prove the captain's judgment wrong. He then follows up with his ace attack called lightning spears, while Jin continues dodging every strike and slowly getting on his nerves. While the skinny rat believes that all Jin can do is keep running away, Jin himself quietly sighs and thinks that this kind of power was never meant to be used against people. However, since there is no other choice left, Jin finally decides to demonstrate his ability and intentionally reveals a unique spirit art. He uses a gravity manipulation attack and forces the skinny rat Lord Gita down onto the ground, pinning him there and making it clear that he never stood a chance and that his arrogance meant nothing in the end. The headmaster and Lord Rudman, the fat man, are both left shocked by what they witness. Even Argus and his sister Miria stand there with their mouths open after seeing such a clean display of power that they have never witnessed before. When they ask what exactly just happened, Jin calmly explains that he simply manipulated the gravity surrounding Lord Gita. When he hears people saying that they have never seen anything like this before, Jin smiles quietly as he realizes just how much there is for the students, as well as the instructors of the academy, to learn. Lord Gita grinds his teeth in frustration as he lies flat on the ground looking absolutely miserable. Out of sheer pity for the wrinkly old man, our hero finally releases the gravity pressure, pinning him down. Gita has a meltdown, shouting that a spirit technique like that should not even exist. He insists the inferior must be using some kind of illegal trick. Our boy quietly stands there and takes the verbal abuse like a champ. While the geezer screeches in his face like a Karen, watching the exchange, the headmaster calmly makes her decision. The surrounding students are impressed as well. Miria in particular cannot understand how he controls that much divine power. Normally, inferiors barely possess any at all. Her curiosity spikes and she is determined to uncover who Jin really is. The scene shifts to the welcome ceremony 1 week later. There, the headmaster announces that Harnesk Academy was founded to train warriors capable of eliminating invading threats. Anyone too weak to keep up has no place within its walls. However, those who succeed are practically guaranteed a future filled with status and influence. Observing from above, a few demi-humans standing near Miria are surprised by how many newcomers have gathered. Quite a few of them do not even come from noble families. A lion demi-human named Rias greets Miria casually. He mentions that it is unexpected to see her attending the welcome ceremony in person. While chatting, he suddenly notices an inferior sitting beside the faculty and nearly chokes. When Miria reveals that the inferior is actually their new teacher, he completely loses his composure. She asks Rias for his honest first impression based purely on appearance. When he bluntly describes the guy as an average nobody with no wife and no life, she admits that was her initial judgment too. Feeling multiple stares drilling into him, Jin quickly realizes he cannot start investigating the academy too openly from day one. Before anything else, he needs to rebrand his image from a worthless inferior into something more neutral and unthreatening. Right now, it feels like he has a giant target painted on his back. After the ceremony concludes, it is finally time for his first class. Meanwhile, Lord Gita gathers the senior students and announces that regular classes are officially back in session. He bluntly warns them not to fall behind the promising new talents who joined this year. That said, he angrily demands to know why most of the class is absent. The old man smiles on the inside, fully aware that many of them would rather die than sit through a lesson taught by an inferior. The greasy rat even went out of his way to spread the word that today's lecture would be handled by Jin. Surprisingly, our professor does not seem bothered in the slightest. He confidently stands at the podium and introduces himself as the new spirit techniques instructor. Without missing a beat, Rias shamelessly asks whether he truly has what it takes to teach the most elite class in the academy. Our boy responds with a calm smile, saying they will find out soon enough. He even tells the lion demi-human that he is free to leave if the class proves beneath him. With that established, he lays down one rule immediately. He tells his students they must never use divine power against humans under any circumstance. To clarify his reasoning, he explains that divine power was designed to suppress the regeneration abilities of inhibitors. However, humans recover normally after being hurt, revealing that its true purpose was always to eliminate invaders. Hearing that, some loudmouth at the back starts trash-talking, calling him soft because he supposedly lacks divine power. The brat insists he has every right to use his strength however the hell he pleases. Slightly annoyed, Professor Jin invites him to test whether he is truly as weak as claimed. Right there in the middle of class, he tells the student to hit him with his strongest move. The kid grins arrogantly, declaring he will never attend class again if the professor so much as scratches him. Seizing the opportunity, he conjures a lightning spear crackling with energy. Even Lord Gita tenses up, worried the classroom might not survive such a reckless attack. Without hesitation, the student launches the spear straight at Jin, kicking up a massive cloud of dust across the room. Everyone assumed the inferior got destroyed, but then a blade shoots out from the haze and jams into the wall behind him, barely missing his ugly mug. Jin calmly explains that the sword would have gone straight through him if he had truly meant to finish him off. With that, he delivers his first lesson of the semester. Never judge someone purely by appearance. Rias watches in silence, wondering if that technique even qualified as a spirit art. Professor Jin continues smoothly, explaining that inferiors are labeled that way because they are considered weak. Then, as someone clearly leagues above them, he asks what that would make him. His aura surges to its peak as he answers his own question. That he declares is what you call a teacher. Next, he delivers a second lesson. He asks the same kid if he knows the criteria required to activate spirit arts. Acting like it is common knowledge, the student answers that it all comes down to vivid imagination. If you picture something clearly enough, the spirits will carry it out. Professor Jin agrees that imagination matters, but adds that there is one critical element they are all missing. He explains that spirits respond to different wavelengths, and they are what really trigger their actions. There are 8 primary wavelengths in total. Among them, ignition, discharge, healing, and freezing are the 4 most people know. However, gravity control, light control, atmosphere control, and spatial manipulation also exist. Lord Gita nearly chokes seeing him use all 8 of them so casually. With that revelation, our boy formally begins his first real lecture. Later that evening, he contemplates where to start his investigation into the Academy secrets. The campus is crowded with students at every corner. After the display in class, he is the main topic of discussion. If he wants answers, he needs access to somewhere students are not allowed to enter. On his way, he crosses paths with Miria. Without hesitation, she bluntly asks him to admit who he truly is. He responds by asking how he could be anything other than the so-called inferior everyone labels him as. She concedes that would make sense if not for his ability to command all 8 spirit arts effortlessly. Not even most demi-humans are capable of that. Our boy shrugs and tells her it is not that complicated, comparing it to switching tabs between different wavelengths. Of course, he knows it's more complex in practice than it sounds. She requests they continue this conversation somewhere private. Once alone, she repeats her question about who he is. This time, he claims he is simply a human who was placed in cold sleep beneath Kodama village for a few million years. To humor him, she asks what he supposedly did before hibernation. Jin answers honestly that he served as a special forces agent for his country. Even though millennia have passed, he remembers those days vividly, as if they happened only a few years ago. Curious, she presses further, asking why someone who fought for his nation would be sealed away in cold sleep. He feels sad, admitting he failed his mission. He honestly thought that if he pushed himself hard enough, he could protect everyone. But in the end, he failed and lost it all. He also confesses that becoming a professor was not random. He needs the influence of the Ulton family. Moving on, he asks her where they are headed. She soon leads him to a dusty, run-down room, explaining it used to be a storage space where instructors kept their teaching supplies. On one of the shelves, an owl statue immediately catches his attention. He asks what her real reason was for bringing him here. So, Miria admits she has been investigating the strange empty space located right next to this storage room. It is far too large to simply be unused, which makes her certain it is hiding something important. Without wasting a second, Professor Jin casually reaches out and grabs the owl statue. She side-eyes him in confusion, wondering why he is petting a dusty old decoration. The moment he twists it slightly, the bookshelves slide apart, revealing a hidden passage leading deeper inside. He calmly congratulates her on being correct about the existence of a secret room. Miria is left speechless, unable to understand how he solved the mechanism so quickly. Our professor coolly explains that he noticed the owl was the only clean object in a room buried under thick layers of dust. After that, he tells her to remain behind while he goes in to investigate the suspicious chamber alone. Surprised, Miria firmly states she will be accompanying him. He reminds her there could be a dangerous invader inside, and he might not be able to protect her. The blonde makes it clear her skills are not to be underestimated. She confidently claims she stands leagues above everyone else in her class, with only her brother possibly surpassing her skill. Hearing that, he decides to take her at her word. The two of them carefully descend the decrepit staircase, which stretches far deeper than either of them expected. Miria quietly appreciates how convenient it is to command light so effortlessly in total darkness. Jin casually jokes out loud that the place feels like the perfect dungeon for monsters to spawn in a fantasy game, leaving the girl confused by his gamer reference. Curious again, she brings up his backstory once more. She asks if he already has a suspect in mind, since hunting down threats was supposedly his specialty. He cannot help but feel amused at how quickly she accepted his unbelievable story. As a small reward for her trust, he reveals that he has a strong suspicion Lord Rudman might be involved somehow. She immediately asks why he is so certain. Professor Jin explains that while the man appears charismatic during lectures, there is something deeply unsettling about him when he is alone. In those quiet moments, the greasy bastard gives off the vibe of someone definitely plotting something shady. He says this kind of behavior is often seen in people whose real nature is completely different from the image they show the world. On top of that, he found it pretty obvious that the man is far too observant for a teacher. Miria admits she originally suspected Lord Gita instead, but Jin dismisses her theory, pointing out that someone with zero control over his emotions could never orchestrate anything truly sinister. To her surprise, he even goes as far as to say that the wrinkly old nutcase is probably decent at heart. At last, the two reach the bottom of the staircase, which opens into a massive, dust-filled hall. Miria's eyes widen in shock at the enormous labyrinth hidden directly beneath the academy grounds. Suddenly, Jin stops walking because he is just as stunned. Not even in his wildest imagination did he expect to find Kagura's laboratory hidden in a place like this. When Jin looks at the doors protected by nanomachines, which people of this era would simply call spirits, he becomes certain that this must truly be Kagura's laboratory. Miria grows nervous because even though she had been searching for a long time, she never managed to discover this massive door that had been hidden beneath the academy the entire time. Jin explains to her that ordinary people would need a special access key to open such a door. He remembers how Hakama inherited the key back in Kodama village, and he believes that someone in this place must have inherited a similar key in the same way. However, Jin already knows that he himself automatically holds full access, so he calmly raises his hand forward. The lock system immediately recognizes him as the individual with the highest level of authority and quickly unlocks the door for him. As the large gates slowly open, Jin wonders if the one trying to overthrow the rulers of this country might also be someone who had access to this place. Meanwhile, Miria still stands there stunned, unable to process that something like this existed right beneath their academy all along. She then asks Jin if he truly did not need a key, and Jin casually remarks that ancient humans are special in that regard. Miria finally begins to believe that Jin's words might be true and quietly follows him deeper underground into the hidden lab. Inside, they discover several corruptors locked inside large metal cages, and strangely, all of them remain completely calm without showing any sign of going wild. Jin remembers the corruptors that the bandits had locked up earlier and recalls how they also stayed unusually quiet until the moment they were finally released. However, the thing that troubles him the most is the question of how anyone could transport such massive corruptors all the way into a place like this without being noticed. Miria admits that her brother's suspicion about this academy might have been correct after all. She proposes that they stay hidden and wait quietly because whoever caused this is certain to return to the area eventually, giving them a chance to ambush the culprit. Jin, however, tells her that instead of standing around and waiting, they should quickly seal the academy and deal with these corruptors first. Miria argues that they cannot allow the mastermind behind this plan to escape. But Jin explains that protecting the students must come first because if these corruptors start rampaging, it will put every life in the academy at risk. When he mentions that her brother would probably make the same decision, the girl finally agrees with his approach. Jin then adds that he has a bad feeling about all of this, and whenever he gets that feeling, his instincts usually turn out to be correct. He says that he will investigate the laboratory a little further himself and asks her to go back up and bring her brother so the academy can be placed under curfew and the students can be protected. After sending her back to the surface, Jin moves deeper into the underground facility, hoping to discover some useful clues. Meanwhile, on the surface, the skinny rat is being mocked for losing to the new tutor. Even so, he still calls Jin an inferior species and blames him for ruining his reputation. The headmaster then walks over to Lord Gita and tells the skinny rat to stop making strange movements because the students are starting to feel uncomfortable. He gets publicly humiliated by the headmaster before she asks about Lord Rudman, who has been missing since that morning. The headmaster feels overwhelmed, but the fat man's absence only makes her more worried. Just then, she notices a dark cloud forming above the academy and wonders what has just happened. Meanwhile, Miria rushes toward the surface. But as she exits the door, she comes face to face with Lord Rudman, the fat man who had been missing since the morning, now wearing a purely evil expression that clearly shows he is up to no good. Back in the lab, Jin examines some strange reddish portals that appear to pulse as if they are alive. He wonders whether this thing is actually alive and if Kagura is the one who created it. Jin then finds the message cube Kagura left behind along with the nanomachines injector. The ancient human hopes the cube will contain clues to help him understand and resolve the current situation. He quickly activates the cube and a hologram of Kagura appears casually holding a coffee. Kagura had already expected Jin to reach this facility before anyone else since this lab is the closest to where he would awaken. The doc explains that in this lab he was developing a device that humans had never accomplished even hundreds of millions of years ago, and that a small portion of the device's power has been sealed within the injector for Jin to use. He praises himself for this achievement before finally revealing that the mind-blowing device he is referring to is actually a teleportation device. He never once imagined that Kagura could have created something of such enormous scale. But now everything starts clicking into place. Argus mentioned that invaders appeared across the city out of nowhere. Alarm bells start ringing in his head because whoever owns this device is likely behind everything, especially with an entire zoo's worth of monsters locked up down here. Then he notices something off about the mad scientist's recorded message. The original teleportation device was a pure blue color. If that is true, then what the hell is this red device standing in front of him? Now, just as the nearby clock strikes 12, the device activates with a violent hum. Jin steadies himself, bracing for whatever nightmare is about to crawl out of it. Instead, every invader inside the cages instantly vanishes into thin air. Up on the surface, Argus and the Holy Knights witness their worst nightmare unfolding in real time. Hundreds of invaders rain down from the sky onto the royal capital, looking like they just dropped into a battle royale match. Back underground, the greasy fat man turns toward Miria with the creepiest smile imaginable. He mockingly asks why she seems so tense and impatient. Miria coldly tells the pig responsible for all this to step aside unless he is asking for a fight. Genuinely surprised, Lord Redmond admits he suspected she had been investigating him for quite some time. Unfortunately for her, she simply figured it out too late. When Miria demands to know what that means, he calmly declares that the day of judgment has arrived. The balding potato sighs, revealing he originally planned to delay this event, but the two rats snooping around his laboratory forced his hand. More specifically, he realized that the real threat to his grand plan is Jin. Every instinct in his gut warned him that the new instructor would become the biggest headache imaginable. Just like Miria's brother, without needing confirmation, he already knows Jin was the one who uncovered the hidden passage. Deciding he has wasted enough time talking, he concludes it is best to eliminate all witnesses right here. Miria almost laughs at the idea that he believes he can defeat her. A disturbingly demonic grin spreads across Redmond's face as he boasts about the unimaginable power he has gathered. What he does not realize is that a girl is quietly creeping up behind him with a pot larger than his own head. Miria nervously sweats, torn between fear for the girl and doubt over whether this ridiculous plan will actually succeed. Without hesitation, Hakama swings with everything her tiny arms can muster and smashes the fat bastard's lard-filled head. Miria stares at her in shock and wants to know how she even found this place. Hakama hurriedly explains that she came looking for Jin. There is absolute chaos outside, and it will be impossible to save everyone without their guardian. On the way, she ran into another new student, Kudo. The girl said their professor had gone into the storage room only a short while earlier. The new girl feels slightly guilty about knocking out a teacher, but Hakama insists the creep deserved every bit of it. Besides, since he never saw their faces from behind, they could easily pin the blame on the blonde princess if things go south. At that moment, Jin finally reaches the top of the stairs. Concerned, he asks what happened, only to spot a floppy pig on the floor like a fallen bowling pin. Hakama quickly snaps him out of it and informs him that the city outside has descended into complete chaos. He is not surprised at all because he already knows there is only one destination the lab's invaders could have been sent to. Miria turns pale as the realization hits her, and the three of them rush outside without wasting another second. Fires rage across the city and nearly half of it lies in ruins. Terrified citizens scatter in every direction as hell breaks loose. Among all the invading creatures, one monster that looks like a hulking Vilgax stands out as the strongest by far. Seeing her beloved home reduced to this state leaves Miria completely speechless. Meanwhile, Jin feels the weight of failure crush his chest again, thinking he should have destroyed the device when he had the chance. Hakama snaps him back to reality again. She points at the massive tentacle monster, which is charging up a devastating attack aimed straight at the royal palace. Determined to atone for his mistake, Jin uses the injection Kagura left behind for him. After using it, he gains a toned-down version of teleportation. The mad scientist had explained that the nanomachines only store enough energy to activate it once every 24 hours. On top of that, its range is supposedly limited to a short distance within the user's line of sight. However, those restrictions apply to ordinary users, and Jin is anything but ordinary. Someone of his caliber can practically teleport as far as his eyes are capable of seeing. Without hesitating even a second, he vanishes and reappears directly in the path of the massive laser beam just before it can strike the royal palace. Meanwhile, inside the royal palace, a panicked woman rushes straight to the royal guildmaster, Hardin Gunslot, to report the massive invader currently towering over the outer wall. But instead of freaking out, Hardin is strangely calm. He already knows the situation is beyond normal emergency levels. Still, he assures her that everyone who can still move has already been deployed, and the Holy Knights who are still available are also heading out to suppress the chaos. Unfortunately, that only makes the woman even more terrified because Hardin drops the worst possible news. Half of the Holy Knights are currently away from the capital on another mission. At this point, Hardin is completely certain this attack was planned. These enemies deliberately waited until the kingdom's strongest defenders were scattered before launching their strike. If the Grand Commander were present, he probably could have stopped the giant corruptor, but right now, they have to survive without him. Then the boss corruptor fires a devastating blast straight toward the castle. Hardin quietly accepts that this might be the end. But just when everyone thinks the royal palace is about to be erased, Jin suddenly appears and blocks the attack head-on. The woman instantly recognizes him as the man from Kodama village and practically loses her mind from relief. After the blast finally disappears, Jin lands on the ground and gathers power into one hand. Without wasting a second, he fires his own attack right back at the monster. The blast lands, but even though it is strong, it only leaves a small cut on the corruptor's shoulder. Jin quickly realizes the problem. This thing is way too massive to delete with one casual shot. Even worse, the teleportation drained far more energy than he expected, meaning he cannot fight the way he usually does. So our boy changes the plan. He draws his blade and prepares to slash the giant down with speed instead of raw output. With one swing through the air, he releases a powerful impact that slices the corruptor from a distance. Then he launches himself forward, fully aware that the damage is already regenerating almost immediately. Still, that small opening is all he needs. Jin applies the fundamentals of nanomachine control. First, he removes his own body weight using gravity manipulation. Then, he generates wind by controlling atmospheric pressure, turning himself into a living missile as he shoots forward across the battlefield. At the same time, one knight is pinned to the ground by a corruptor and is just seconds away from getting eaten. But before the monster can finish him off, a fireball suddenly crashes into it and burns it alive. Turns out, the students from Harnisk Academy have joined the fight. Thanks to their help, the knight manages to stand again. Unfortunately, the students immediately end up trapped by two more corruptors. Lucky for them, they are standing directly in Jin's path. As our boy rushes past, he casually erases both monsters like they were nothing more than annoying bugs in the road. The knight and the students can only stare blankly, barely able to understand what they just witnessed. Jin continues charging toward the boss corruptor, desperate to close the distance before its wounds fully regenerate. The monster senses him coming and launches an attack in his direction, but Jin dodges it cleanly and keeps moving. He slices through every corruptor blocking his way, refusing to slow down for even a second. Eventually, he reaches the giant and cuts straight into one of its legs, making the monster lose its balance. Before it can recover, Jin unleashes several more slashes across its entire body, forcing the enormous beast to collapse helplessly to the ground. The moment it tries to rise again, Jin creates a spear from his power and hurls it straight into the corruptor's head. The impact explodes across the battlefield, and just like that, the boss corruptor is finally dead, leaving everyone around him completely shocked and wondering who the hell this man truly is. 3 days later, the civilians are already busy repairing their homes. Jin, meanwhile, is sitting in his room, honestly relieved that the damage was not as catastrophic as it could have been. The incident was huge, but the city somehow avoided total collapse. He also has to admit that the Holy Knights worked fast. Even though they could not move freely during the giant corruptor attack, their cleanup afterward was impressively swift. The academy has been sealed for investigation. Lord Rudman, believed to be the mastermind behind the disaster, has already been captured. Several instructors and even academy officials suspected of involvement have been detained as well. In other words, everyone suspicious is being dragged to the royal castle for questioning. Jin figures the academy will stay closed for a while, but the incident also gives him something serious to think about. When enemies gather in one place, he can wipe them out easily. But if they scatter across a wide area, protecting everyone becomes much harder. If he truly wants to defend the people of this era from corruptors, he needs to get stronger. Thinking about that, he pulls out the cube Kagura left behind. But before he can focus, someone knocks on his door. When he opens it, Miria is standing there. She explains that her elder brother summoned him. Apparently, Argus wants to thank Jin properly and discuss another matter. Jin asks why she came all the way there herself when the academy is supposed to be closed. Miria says it would be too rude to send a servant to summon someone as incredible as him, so she came personally as a representative of the Ulton house. Hearing that, Jin teases her, asking if she is finally done calling him an inferior species. Miria immediately swears she has reflected on her behavior. After everything she saw, she now understands that people should not be judged by appearance, and no matter who they are, they deserve basic respect. She is practically begging for forgiveness when Hakama arrives and instantly starts teasing her for the total personality flip. Jin is happy to see Hakama, and the girl explains that she got bored at the dorm. Then she casually walks past Miria like she owns the place. Miria immediately gets annoyed and calls her a shameless country bumpkin for barging into Jin's room, forcing Jin to ask if she really reflected at all. Later, the group arrives at Argus's residence, where every servant warmly welcomes them. The butler asks Nino and Poire to guide the guests, and the two happily agree. As they walk through the mansion, Jin asks whether they were hurt during the recent chaos. Thankfully, both of them say they are fine, explaining that everyone at work protected them. Jin is relieved to hear they are being treated well. Nino then mentions that Jin played the biggest role in the whole incident. Jin asks who told him that, and Nino says Miria and Argus. Miria proudly declares that spreading the achievements of her master is only natural for her as his disciple. This only confuses Jin even more. She even lectures Poire and Nino, telling them to learn from Jin since they belong to the same race as him. The two happily agree, while Nino quietly whispers that Miria used to be extremely strict with them, but lately she has become a little nicer. Hearing that, Jin can't help but remember SARS, because her sudden change in attitude is just as wild. Eventually, they arrive at Argus's office. Poire respectfully knocks and announces that they have brought Jin. Once they enter, Jin sees Argus sitting with Hardin. After everyone takes their seats, Argus apologizes for summoning him so suddenly, but Jin tells him it is fine. Argus introduces Hardin properly, and the guildmaster studies Jin carefully before respectfully shaking his hand. Hardin explains that he personally witnessed Jin's actions during the disaster. If Jin had not stopped the boss corruptor, the entire kingdom would have faced a national crisis. Because of that, Hardin bows his head and sincerely thanks him for saving their nation. Jin, being Jin, refuses to take all the credit. He humbly says he only defeated the huge one. The Holy Knights were the ones who handled the suppression afterward, so they deserve thanks as well. Hardin is surprised by how modest he sounds. He starts wondering whether Jin simply lacks ambition or if something else is going on. Jin then asks if thanking him was the only reason they called him. That is when Hardin reveals the bigger issue. The royal family wishes to meet him, but before arranging that meeting, there is something they need to clarify. Hardin's expression turns serious as he asks Jin who he truly is. He explains that almost no information in the country escapes him because guild members are stationed across every city. Naturally, he investigated Jin, but despite that, he found absolutely nothing. Argus adds that he also wants the truth and warns Jin not to dodge the question this time. He directly asks where Jin came from and why he came to their country. Jin sighs. He explains that he was not exactly trying to hide his identity. The problem is that even if he told the truth, he figured nobody would believe him anyway. Argus assures him that if Jin is willing to speak honestly, he will believe him. So Jin finally comes clean. He tells them he is a human who lived 100 million years ago. The room goes quiet. Argus immediately remembers the taboo of Kodama village and pieces it together. Jin must be the one who had been sleeping beyond the sealed door all this time. Hardin, naturally, struggles to believe such an insane claim. But Miria instantly backs Jin up, saying she believes him completely. After all, Jin opened an ancient door beneath the academy that was never supposed to be opened. She also points out that Argus has already seen Jin's power with his own eyes. Argus is more shocked by his sister defending Jin than by the story itself, wondering what the hell happened to make her change so dramatically. Jin admits that he had been sleeping underground in their country for all that time. The reason he came to the royal capital was simple. He wanted information about the current era. Hardin asks what kind of information he is looking for, and Jin says there are two main things. The first is information about the corruptors. These monsters existed even 100 million years ago, but originally they should not still be alive in the current era. Hardin asks why they should have disappeared, and Jin explains that it is because of the power people now call spirits. Long ago, these particles spread across the world. Corruptors can only survive in contaminated environments, while spirits possess the ability to purify that contamination. In theory, that should have slowly wiped the corruptors out. So why are they still here? Jin does not know the exact answer yet, but according to the cube, the corruptors are evolving. Hardin becomes fascinated by the cube, wondering whether it came from an ancient civilization and what kind of mechanism powers it. He also starts wondering if Jin really is a person from 100 million years in the past. Jin then moves on, saying he believed there would be records in the royal capital, which is why he came here. But Argus is not done. He asks about Jin's second reason. Jin answers that he is searching for clues about research facilities. One facility existed beneath the royal capital, but it was created by his old friend. Similar facilities are scattered across the world, and Jin intends to find them. For a moment, he wonders whether he should mention the power-ups Kagura left behind, but decides to keep that part vague. Instead, he makes one thing clear. His goal is to erase the corruptors from the world. That is the reason he is here. Everyone falls silent. His story sounds absurd, but his goal is too serious to ignore. Argus finally says he believes him. They both want the same thing, to deal with the corruptors. However, he advises Jin not to share this story carelessly because most people will assume he has completely lost his mind. Jin agrees without argument. Argus then asks Hardin what he thinks. Hardin says that if Argus believes Jin, then he will too. Besides, someone intending to harm the kingdom would not risk his life to protect the castle. At that moment, someone knocks on the door. It is Poire, reminding Argus that their scheduled time is approaching. Argus is surprised time passed so quickly and asks Poire and Nino to help Jin get ready. A few hours later, they are heading toward the main palace. Jin is lost in thought, trying to process the fact that he is about to meet the royal family. What confuses him more, though, is why he had to change clothes for it. Argus assures him that the suit looks good on him, even mentioning that the girls who stayed behind were praising him. Hardin explains that the person they will meet is the first prince of Kurmosia, who is currently acting as the king's proxy. In other words, Jin has to present himself properly. Jin just thinks the whole thing is a hassle and hopes he does not get dragged into another annoying mess. Eventually, they arrive at the royal castle. Everyone bows respectfully before the throne. The first prince orders them to raise their heads, and when Jin looks up, he finally sees Taras Kurmosia. Jin greets him politely. Taras returns the gesture by expressing gratitude as the king's proxy. But then he mentions that he heard Jin came from Kodama village and acts surprised that someone like him came from such an insignificant little village. That already pisses Jin off. Then Taras decides to be blunt. He orders Jin to serve him as a holy knight of the royal country and devote himself completely to the kingdom. Jin stays silent, clearly irritated. Taras asks if he did not hear the order. Hardin quickly reminds the prince that they were the ones who called Jin here, so forcing him is unreasonable. But Jin stops Hardin and calmly answers for himself. He says he does not plan to stay in the royal country for long. Taras points out that Jin is currently working at the academy. Jin explains that it is only temporary, so Taras asks if that means he refuses the offer. When Jin does not submit, Taras immediately orders the knights to seize him. Hardin tries to stop him, asking what the hell he thinks he is doing. But Taras declares that Jin is under suspicion of treason. After all, the invader had been hidden behind the ancient sealed door beneath the academy, and Jin was the one who opened that door. Then this arrogant prince has the nerve to ask how they know the whole rescue was not staged by Jin himself. Hardin knows the accusation is insane. It is far too forced. But Jin stays quiet. Taras continues, saying Jin's power would be wasted if left uncontrolled. If Jin pledges loyalty to him, he is willing to let everything slide, but if he refuses, Taras claims he has no choice but to kill him. Argus instantly knows Jin had nothing to do with treason. Jin had only recently arrived in the capital, and Argus had already reported the investigation to the Royal Knights. They should know this. But when one of the Royal Knights smirks, Argus finally realizes they used him. He gets furious at himself because he should have noticed something was off from the suspicious level of castle security. The commanders of the 3rd and 4th units are both fanatically loyal to Taras. They would do anything for him, no matter how unreasonable. Argus also understands that if he had refused the commanders from the start, they probably would have tried to eliminate Jin immediately. Taras tells Jin that a man who can defeat a giant corruptor is far too dangerous to roam free. Then he extends his hand like some merciful ruler and gives Jin one last chance: swear allegiance or die. Jin simply replies that he does not get it. Taras is confused, but Jin calmly asks what the point of a verbal promise is when blades are already pointed at his neck. Even if he said he would obey, he could just run later and make the oath meaningless. From Jin's point of view, Taras only wants to hear him say it. Then, Jin asks if this is just Taras trying to satisfy his need for control, or if there is a deeper reason behind it. That question hits a nerve. The 4th commander gets furious and presses his spear closer to Jin's face, demanding to know who he thinks he is talking to. But Jin simply grabs the shaft of the weapon. The commander suddenly feels an absurd pull and realizes something is wrong. In the next instant, Jin lifts the spear with the commander still holding it and slams the man straight into the floor, knocking him out instantly. Taras is left stunned. Argus, meanwhile, is just worried because he knows this situation is getting worse by the second. The 3rd commander tries to stop Jin with spirit arts, but her power refuses to activate. With no other choice, she orders the knights to seize him. One knight lunges with a spear, but Jin dodges, grabs the weapon, kicks the knight away, and swings the spear around him, knocking out multiple knights in one clean motion. Taras turns to Argus and screams at him to do something. He orders Argus to punish Jin for baring his fangs at the royal family. Argus hesitates for a few seconds, then reluctantly draws his blade, telling Jin not to take it personally. Taras laughs like he has already won and orders the knights to take Jin dead or alive. The knights rush him all at once, but Jin activates his power and disappears before they can even touch him. His voice echoes through the room as he explains that unleashing his true power here would be dangerous. If he seriously wanted to, he could probably wipe the entire city off the map without breaking a sweat. But he has never once intended to do that because he chose to stand with the people of this era. He came here to protect them. Then he appears right behind Taras and whispers that there are exceptions. He shows no mercy to those who bring darkness into people's lives. With that, Jin asks the prince one simple question. Which side is he on? Taras freezes so hard he practically forgets how to breathe. The 3rd commander angrily demands whether Jin understands what he is doing. Jin calmly replies that he is standing against people trying to shove injustice down everyone's throat. Naturally, this only makes her angrier. The 4th commander, still lying on the floor, forces out a question. Is Jin declaring himself an enemy of the royal kingdom? Jin reminds them that he is not the one picking a fight. They are. He makes his position clear. If they are royalty, he can show respect. If they follow the country's rules and their demands are reasonable, he will even cooperate. But he is not cheap enough to swallow nonsense and obey in silence. If they try to force him, they have no right to complain when he pushes back. Then, he turns back to Terrace and asks whether this deluded fool truly believes everything bends to his will or if there is something else going on. Before things can explode even further, someone enters the hall. The second princess, Charlotte, respectfully asks if she may join the conversation. Argus is visibly relieved. She made it just in time, and he decides to leave the rest to her. Charlotte looks at Terrace and casually says he seems to be enjoying himself. Terrace panics the moment he sees her, quickly realizing that Argus must have been behind this. Charlotte tells him that if he was going to invite the hero who saved the kingdom, he should have invited her too. Then she warns him that he is not even acting properly as the king's proxy. Terrace snaps back, arguing that Jin is no hero. Anyone who bears their fangs at the royal family is a criminal. Charlotte acts surprised, and the third commander, Wasa, confirms it by saying Jin wounded the fourth commander. Charlotte calmly asks whether that happened because they were being rude first. Wasa angrily asks what she is implying. Then she points at Jin and shouts that he was about to harm the first prince. Charlotte simply says Jin was only standing behind Terrace and asks Jin if that is correct. Jin smiles and agrees. He says he merely stood behind the prince and asked a question. Terrace is furious, but Charlotte cuts him down with elegance, saying that calling someone a criminal just for standing behind him makes him look extremely small-minded. Then she bows to Jin and tells him she will not ask him to serve the royal kingdom. Instead, she asks whether he would lend them a hand as a friend if the kingdom ever finds itself in trouble. Jin replies that he would be happy to help. Charlotte thanks him and says they should move because this is not the best place to talk. She walks forward and orders the knights to make way and mind their manners as she escorts her friend out. The knights immediately lower their weapons and step aside, leaving Terrace behind, practically boiling in anger. Outside the royal castle, Argus worriedly asks Jin why he pulled such a dangerous stunt. Jin does not answer. In truth, he felt a strange presence from Terrace and sincerely hopes it was just his imagination. Instead, Jin thanks Charlotte for helping him. She gladly accepts, then apologizes for Terrace's actions and hopes they can remain good friends. Jin agrees warmly. Argus asks why Terrace would do something so reckless. Charlotte admits she does not know his exact motive, but she knows her brother is dangerously ambitious. Once Terrace ascends the throne, he intends to wage war on other nations and expand the kingdom's territory. She guesses that Jin's existence looks like an obstacle to him. Still, Charlotte assures Jin that she will not let Terrace lay a hand on him again. By now, Hardin should be reporting the incident to the king. With the king's restrictions in place, Terrace will not be able to move against Jin so easily, but that is not what Jin is truly worried about. Charlotte then reveals that she has no intention of yielding the throne to Terrace. She asks whether Jin is willing to trust her. After judging her character, Jin decides she is good enough and agrees. After that agreement, Argus asks where they are heading. Charlotte replies that it would be disgraceful not to reward the hero who saved the royal kingdom. Then she asks if it is true that Jin has been living at an inn. When he confirms it, she decides to fix that problem immediately. Charlotte rewards Jin with a huge mansion. She explains that it is an old noble villa abandoned long ago when its owner left the royal capital, so Jin can use it however he wants. When he opens the door, he finds a clean, spacious interior with an expensive chandelier hanging above. The place is honestly way too fancy for someone who recently woke up naked in a ruined lab. Jin nervously asks if it is really okay for him to accept something this huge. Charlotte cheerfully says yes. She explains that the villa originally belonged to someone with the title of Count, but it has not been used for a long time. Jin asks whether the original owner might suddenly come back, but the moment he sees Charlotte's grin, he decides not to dig any deeper. Some royal problems are better left untouched. Jin thinks the reward is too much, but Argus explains that this only shows how highly they value him. Then he pushes Jin inside, officially telling him that from this day forward, this is his home. Jin looks around excitedly, then points out that the mansion is way too big for one person to live in. Hearing that, Argus suggests arranging servants to manage the place. More specifically, he says Nino and Poire would gladly accept the job if it was for Jin. Jin asks if that is really okay, but Argus reminds him that he already owes Jin a great deal. To make sure Jin does not feel burdened, Argus asks him to grant one request in return. The scene then shifts to the 7th Unit training grounds. Karina is sparring with a fellow knight and easily catches him off guard before defeating him. Rhea stops the match and praises her improvement, but Karina knows she still has a long way to go. During the recent chaos, all she could do was handle small fry while Jin casually killed the giant corruptor by himself. Just remembering that pisses her off. She still cannot accept how someone from an inferior race can be that ridiculously strong. Then Argus and Charlotte arrive at the training ground with Jin, which only annoys Karina even more. She immediately wonders what the hell he's doing there. On Jin's side, he asks Argus what he wants him to do. Argus replies that Jin should already understand by now. Jin guesses that Argus wants him to train the Holy Knights, and Argus confirms it. Argus reminds Jin that he personally experienced Terrace's complete lack of restraint earlier. Terrace and Charlotte are both contenders for the throne, and nobody knows when or how Terrace will move next. The only ones who can protect Charlotte are the 7th unit, who have sworn loyalty to her. Since the critical moment could arrive at any time, Argus wants Jin to train them for that day. Jin quietly observes the knights. Their fundamentals are solid, and they clearly train hard on a regular basis. But from his point of view, something important is missing. He smiles as memories from 100 million years ago return to him. Back then, to become an official agent serving the nation, Jin trained like his life depended on it, because for him, it literally did. Argus calls everyone's attention and announces that they have invited a national hero as a special instructor to strengthen their training. He tells them Jin will teach them what they currently lack and asks if they understand. The knights answer in unison. Jin looks over the group and thinks that obedient students are easy to train. The difficult ones, however, might become a hassle. He starts with a simple order. He wants to assess their stamina, so he tells them to run laps around the outer perimeter of the training ground. Karina immediately objects. She says they already do this every day, so there is no need to check because they have more than enough stamina. Then she mockingly asks if Jin came all this way just to make them do something pointless. Rhea and Argus try to stop her, but Jin apologizes instead and decides to change the test. He removes his jacket and walks toward the wooden weapons. He asks Karina if her weapon is a spear. When she confirms it, Jin picks one up and tells her to try landing a single hit on him. There is no time limit. If she can land even one clean hit, she does not have to run. Jin smiles, already knowing Karina would never accept training from someone she considers weaker. Karina smirks and asks if he can even use a spear. So Jin answers without words. He spins the spear around like it weighs nothing, rolling it through his hands like a toothpick while releasing so much force that everyone in the training ground goes silent. When he finishes showing off, he confidently tells Karina that there is no weapon he cannot handle. 100 million years ago, Jin was training his spear skills when Kagura appeared with a drink and asked if he had any hobbies besides training. Jin says he used to watch hero shows as a kid, but Kagura points out that he is asking about the current Jin, not the child from the past. Kagura reminds him that he is already the top agent of their country and asks if he does not think it is fine to take a break once in a while. But Jin replies that he does not have time for that. He is often assigned to infiltrate enemy organizations, and sometimes he is sent in with nothing. That means he has to produce weapons on site, and if he picks up any random weapon during a mission, he needs to know how to use it well enough to survive. Even a tiny increase in survival odds is worth training for. Kagura is left speechless. Then he sighs in frustration and promises that someday he will invent something so Jin will never have to worry about weapons again. Back in the present, Karina accepts the duel and charges forward with her spear. Jin blocks her attack effortlessly. When their spear blades clash, he pushes her weapon aside and points his spear near her face, defeating her instantly. And then he does it again. And again. Before long, Karina has lost 15 times in a row. She desperately asks for one more round, but the result does not change. Jin blocks her attacks with ease. As he counters, he carefully evaluates her movements. Her speed is good. Her reaction time is not bad. Her strength is impressive, and every thrust from her spear carries real weight. Jin is honestly amazed by the raw power of an evolved human. But with one clean strike, he knocks her spear down and defeats her for the 16th time, ending the match. Karina still refuses to accept defeat and shouts that she can keep going. Jin calmly tells her there is no point. She is already out of stamina. The harder she pushes, the weaker her movements become. He explains that Karina lacks endurance. Her combat style relies too much on physical ability, but her movements are not refined enough. Jin immediately understands why. In this era, spirit arts are the main focus of battle. Compared to the warriors of his time, the required skills are completely different. That confirms his first training goal. He needs to build the Holy Knight's stamina from the ground up. Jin asks Karina if she has any more complaints, then extends his hand to help her up. Karina stays quiet, wondering why he is not even sweating. She does not want to admit it, but she has no choice. Jin is strong. She accepts his hand, and Jin tells everyone to start endurance running. After watching Karina get folded 16 times, the other Holy Knights are suddenly very worried about what kind of training hell is waiting for them. Meanwhile, deep underground in the Royal Castle prison, Terrace walks through the cells and stops in front of one particular cage. He opens it, and the prisoner inside is surprised to see him. Terrace says he wants to have a little chat with the man who orchestrated the entire chaos, Lord Rudman. Rudman claims there is nothing to discuss, but Terrace notices how composed he is and asks if he is still plotting something. Rudman plays dumb but warns that even if Terrace survived this chaos, the royal family will eventually fall. Instead of getting angry, Terrace looks pleased. He pulls something from his clothes and shows Rudman a pink pendant necklace, asking if he planned to use its power. Rudman is shaken and demands to know how Terrace knows about it. Terrace asks if Rudman really thought this was an exclusive secret. He already knows it is an invasion relic, a tool that seals the power of an invader. He also knows Rudman used a similar relic during the chaos. Rudman panics, but Terrace tells him to calm down because this is where the real conversation begins. Terrace says he knows Rudman is dissatisfied with the Kermosha royal family and asks him to join hands. In his eyes, the king and Charlotte are too soft. If things continue like this, the kingdom will eventually be invaded and destroyed. Rudman asks if Terrace plans to destroy the kingdom himself, and Terrace answers without hesitation. Yes. He believes the kingdom must be rebuilt from the ground up into a stronger, more authoritarian nation. To make that happen, he needs Rudman's invasion relic. Hearing his goal, Rudman agrees, but warns that he cannot promise to make Terrace king in the new nation. Terrace says that is fine, but he wants Rudman to swear loyalty to him first. Rudman finds this strange, but Terrace explains that he wants the oath so Rudman cannot betray him later. Rudman secretly smirks, planning to use Terrace as much as possible and discard him in the end. After all, spoken oaths are meaningless. So he agrees and swears loyalty. The moment he says those words, the invasion relic releases purple power that enters Rudman's body. His mind is instantly possessed by the suggestion. Terrace's relic has a terrifying ability. It forces anyone who speaks certain words to truly believe those words came from their own heart, even if they were lying at the time. Rudman collapses to his knees and asks for a command like a loyal dog. Terrace calls him pathetic, nothing more than another pawn to use. Then he quietly mutters that the one who should rule the kingdom is neither Charlotte nor the current king. The kingdom is meant to be led by him. Meanwhile, back at the 7th Unit training ground, Jin and the Knights are running laps. For Jin, running feels refreshing. For the Holy Knights, who are quickly discovering how weak their stamina really is, it is pure nightmare fuel. Jin apologizes to Argus for going overboard, but Argus says it is fine and thanks him instead. He has finally realized how badly he neglected endurance training. The Holy Knights usually travel by horse, and most battles end quickly with spirit arts, so they never had a reason to push their stamina to the limit. Argus tells Jin he will focus heavily on improving their endurance, and Jin agrees. Then he notices Charlotte is still watching them and asks if she should not be heading back soon. She asks if she is in the way, but Jin explains that is not what he meant. Charlotte clearly does not want to leave, but she knows she should return before someone scolds her. Before going, however, she wants to confirm something. She takes a bag from one of her knights and shows Jin a red invasion relic. Jin is visibly startled. He asks what exactly it is. Charlotte explains that it was secretly confiscated from Rudman. It is a demonic tool that harnesses the power of corruptors, or as people in this era call them, invaders. They do not know who created it or how it was made, but it grants immense power to its user. Jin is speechless. He cannot believe something like this exists in the current era. To him, it looks like a machine with part of a corruptor embedded inside. Charlotte notices his reaction and guesses that he has seen something similar before. Jin confirms it. He tells her he saw something like it in the academy underground. Since he judged the relic too dangerous to leave behind, he destroyed it. Argus remembers that this must be the device Jin mentioned during the Chaos incident. Charlotte praises him for making the right call. If the enemy had recovered that relic, another disaster could have happened. She says she will investigate the relic's origin on her end and asks Jin to share anything he discovers. Jin agrees. After Charlotte leaves, Argus says they cannot allow something like that to cause another incident. They need to stay vigilant. Jin does not answer right away, and Argus asks what is wrong. Jin says it is nothing, but in truth, he is thinking deeply. Corruptors normally never stop moving. They rampage endlessly. Yet lately, they seem to wait, coordinate, and move with purpose. That makes him wonder if something beyond the invasion relic is controlling them. Then he remembers Kagura's warning. Some corruptors had begun evolving along with the changing environment. Maybe that means there are now individuals capable of commanding other corruptors. 4 days later, at Harnisk Academy, the headmaster has finally been released after a full week of interrogation. She summons Jin and Argus, clearly frustrated. She says she kept telling the investigators she had nothing to do with the incident, but she admits there were fools like Rudman inside the academy. Argus says it was not her fault, but she disagrees. As headmaster, she feels she was lacking and should have noticed the danger sooner. She admits that without Jin, things would have become irreversible. Then she says she heard he was only temporarily hired for investigation purposes and was not actually affiliated with the Holy Knights, so she never expected him to be the one to save them. The headmaster stands and bows sincerely, thanking Jin for protecting the kingdom and her students. That warms Jin's heart. Then she asks whether he plans to continue as a lecturer. She heard he intended to resign. Jin cannot answer immediately. Originally, he only planned to work at the academy for a while to earn travel money, but after the chaos, he received another reward. Now the situation has changed. He awkwardly looks at Argus, and Argus suggests arranging a substitute for him. Unfortunately, the headmaster shuts that down immediately. Jin accepted the lecturer role, which means he should fulfill his responsibility. Quitting after just one day of class would be unfair to the students. Neither Jin nor Argus can argue because she has a point. When Argus tries to explain Jin's circumstances, the headmaster cuts him off and tells them to follow her. As they walk through the corridor, Jin asks what happened to Instructor Gita. Argus says Gita is still detained, talking to himself and trying to set up ways to embarrass Jin. Argus asks what they should do about him since there have been several reports of suspicious behavior. Jin simply says to release Gita because he is harmless. But the headmaster reminds them that Gita tried to frame him, so she suggests letting him cool his head in prison for a little while longer. Eventually, they reach their destination. The headmaster opens the door, and Jin freezes when he sees a crowd of students gathered inside, all excitedly waiting for him. Jin asks what all of this is supposed to be. The headmaster explains that the students came for him. Rumors about the hero who saved the kingdom have already spread across the academy. Miria, watching from the side, is immediately irritated. She wonders if these classmates have no shame at all, acting like they were on Jin's side from the very beginning. Riaz quickly reminds her that she used to have the exact same attitude, shutting down her complaint instantly. One student approaches Jin and admits that she skipped class to hang out in town during the chaos. Then a corruptor attacked her, and with her own strength, she could do absolutely nothing. Fortunately, Jin appeared in time and saved her from being eaten. With tears in her eyes, she thanks him. More students gather around him, telling him the same thing. He saved them too. Behind Jin, the headmaster gently pats his back. She says she knows he probably has his own reasons, but asks if he would still teach the students, even if it's only once in a while. Jin agrees without hesitation. The story then shifts 100 million years into the past. Kagura reports that the government has officially designated the monsters as corruptors, creatures born from decay and depravity. He explains that corruptors can only operate in areas with heavy pollution, but because contamination is spreading everywhere, humanity is running out of places to hide. One of Jin's teammates, Sana Sakuma, notices him lost in thought and teases him about it. His other teammates, Kazama Goto and Mizuki Maruyama, join in as well, asking what happened to his usual overconfidence. But Jin is genuinely worried. They are not fighting humans anymore. These are unidentifiable monsters that cannot even be killed with missiles. He asks if they really stand a chance. His boys become worried too, but Sana stops the mood from sinking. She pinches Jin's cheek and reminds him that he is the strongest agent in the country. He cannot lose his cool now. He needs to keep that smug look on his face like always. Then she asks Kagura to confirm something. If the environment is purified, corruptors will stop functioning, right? Kagura gives a half-hearted yes and explains that the science division is developing a device to restore the contaminated environment. The real issue is whether humanity can hold out long enough for the device to be completed. Sana confidently says that is easy. They just need to hold the corruptors back like they always do. Then she turns to Jin and asks if she is right. Jin agrees, and Sana smiles. But reality is far crueler than confidence. Kazama and Mizuki eventually lose their lives in battle. Jin falls to his knees, unable to accept what he is seeing. Then Sana calls his name, snapping him back to reality. He rushes to her, relieved that she is still holding on, and tells her they need to treat her wounds immediately, but Sana stops him. She knows it is already too late. Holding his hand tightly, she tells him she will not ask him to save the entire world from corruptors. Instead, she only wants one thing. She wants him to never give up until the very last moment. After leaving him with that final wish, Sana passes away. Jin takes out his walkie-talkie and contacts Kagura. He tells him he will participate in the human experimentation project using nanomachines. Kagura asks if he is sure and reminds him that if he is not compatible, he will die. Jin answers that he will die anyway if he keeps fighting like this. So he swears not to give up. Back in the present, Jin wakes from that long, sorrowful dream. He looks at the cubes sitting on his bedside table and picks one up. Then he quietly assures himself that it is okay. He has not forgotten. Looking at the pictures of his fallen comrades, he swears once again that he will take back a world without corruptors. Meanwhile, in the northeastern region of the Kermosia Kingdom, in Plutza territory, at the fortress city of Melmos, a holy knight messenger rushes to report that the enemy is advancing from the northern nation of Balehart. But the Holy Knight's Grand Master Glen Oz can already see them. From his viewpoint, a massive swarm of corruptors is marching straight toward the fortress. Glen knows this number will be difficult to handle even for them. The messenger anxiously asks what they should do. Glen gathers power in his palm and launches it toward the corruptors, but his attack is simply dissolved by a strange shield surrounding them. He cannot believe what he just saw. Without wasting time, Glenn orders the messenger to report to the king immediately while he holds the corruptors back. He is shaken by the fact that some corruptors can now nullify spirit magic. Even worse, corruptors have never moved in organized groups like this before. As Glenn wonders what is happening to the corruptors, he fails to notice the true nightmare hiding among them. In the middle of the swarm stands a human-like corruptor, silently controlling the entire group.